Good evening. Good evening, all. I'm about ready. Okay.
Wow. I'm sure we can arrange that.
Excuse me. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of 29 Palms. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Begin. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Dixon,
Here.
Commissioner Leslie,
Here.
Commissioner Pahana. Here. Vice Chair Walker,
Here.
Chair Krushat. All present.
Okay. Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand on the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going to the city website and clicking on the meeting agendas link. Public comments. This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on this agenda. All comments are to be directed to the Chair of the Commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out a name, address slips, and give them to the Planning Commission Secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by the Brown Act, state law, from taking action or discussing at length items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of that item on the agenda. And I'd like to reiterate that. If you're going to be commenting on item 4, we'll wait till item 4. Okay, do I have any? Item 4. Item 4. Okay. Do I have anybody for public comments from the audience? Okay. Please come up. And if you could, would you fill out a form after you're completed? Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the Planning Commission a thought on RV parking, which I know is related to another section of tonight's agenda. But I was thinking that that might be something better served under the regular, like the municipal code, not to necessarily restrict, but just something to perhaps review as far as like setbacks and appropriate parking and where appropriate parking for on-site residential RV storage might be. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more public comments? Okay. I close public comments. Okay, now I'd like to go to commission comments and reports. Let's start with Leslie.
I have not attended any meetings since our last.
Okay.
I have not attended any meetings as well.
Max.
I have not attended any meetings since our last meeting.
Okay. Eileen.
I did attend a meeting. It was really great. It was the Dark Skies in Wonder Valley community event, and it was about the lighting ordinance and how it got passed through the supervisors of San Bernardino County. And then it talked a little bit about how we have our own, and I thought that was great, and it demonstrated to people what that's going to be enforced, actually, the light fixtures outside, things like that.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move to the consent calendar. We only have one item on the consent calendar. That's the approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of April the 4th. Has everybody had a chance to review those minute meetings?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion we approve the minutes for April 4th as read.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Dixon,
Aye.
Commissioner Leslie,
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana,
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker,
Aye.
Chair Krushat.
Aye.
Approved.
Okay, thank you. Items removed from the consent calendar for discussion. We have no items removed from the consent calendar. So we'll move on to our public hearings. I'll turn it over to staff as we start on film permits.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we have before us is a proposed addition to our development code pertaining to film permits. This would be adding chapter 1935 to our development code. The reason for 1935 is because it was we are proposing to split it off from chapter 1934. 1934 pertains to temporary use permits, and we don't think that film permits fall in the same category as Christmas tree lots and carnivals and pumpkin sales and that kind of thing. It's a unique thing that we think should be handled separately under separate rules. There we go. So, as we did research into other jurisdictions, we looked at several. We looked at County of San Bernardino, County of Riverside, City of San Diego, City of Palm Springs, where else? City of Long Beach, and a few others. We found a lot of commonalities, and they all require permit for commercial filming. And most of, if not all of these other jurisdictions say all commercial filming. We want to recognize that there are instances now, for instance, YouTube travel videos that people post on YouTube that never gets a permit. Technically speaking, that's a commercial filming activity. So we want to have our ordinance recognize these types of activities. So, what our baseline is, a permit would be required for any filming. We're going to change the wording there from videotaping to video recording, motion picture, still photography, or the uses of drones for filming. And we'll get to the exceptions here in a minute. Additional permits would be required if you have to block off the streets, if there's any emulation of weaponry or the use of live weaponry. We want to have the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office be aware. If there's explosives, pyrotechnics, fires, any of that sort of thing, we want to make sure the fire department is also aware. We are splitting this up into two levels of permitting. A minor permit would be for shoots 7 days or fewer. Major film permit would be shoots for longer than 7 days. What we would like to do is, right now our temporary use permit applications require at least 30 days notice. We don't think that's practical anymore. So we're saying that's down to 10 days. We need to have at least 10 days for a minor film permit to review, and major film permit is 30 days. 30 days is correct. We are trying to be pretty explicit here on exemptions. News media have their own regulations, which we're not going to get into. Criminal investigations, film crews of less than 5 people limited to the use of 2 passenger vehicles. This is arbitrary on our part, but we try to be reasonable. We don't think that 2 passenger cars are that onerous. Filming activities are conducted completely inside a structure, not visible from the public, and again, limited to 2 passenger vehicles. And filming with a cell phone or handheld camera for personal use or online platform, we had YouTube in mind, limited to 5 participants and 2 passenger vehicles. Also filming for personal events such as weddings, birthday parties, and the like. We have identified several conditions of approval that would be standard on all these, on basically every type of filming permit. Unless the commission would like me to go over these in detail, I'm just going to put these on the screen. We suggest that the commission take public comment, find this ordinance amendment exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution approving the development code amendment, and forward a recommendation to the city council for approval of the development code amendment. And we are here to answer any questions.
Can you go back one slide just so I could read that while y'all discuss something?
Yeah.
So restriction on hours, meaning that you have a quiet hour observed or something?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it.
Is
we're
there like
never-
an exception to that exception, like to that condition of approval? Like if you specifically needed to film at 1 AM or?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to ask that, lighting equipment is
Right.
situated. I mean, these used to be standard, but they do have to be edited on the particular circumstance.
Like depending on what you're filming or what the whole
Depending what the
purpose,
filming
yeah.
is.
Okay.
Yeah, we tried to be as flexible as possible, recognizing current technologies and patterns, but also identifying issues that we still need to deal with.
So, so I understand, I get back to the lighting, if a production required additional lighting, or we could permit it over a certain period, and that would be written into the permit.
Right.
Right, okay. Do I have any other questions from the commission for staff? Because I have one. Okay, in reviewing both this one and the temporary use permits, how would you determine what the fee, is? I mean, I didn't see a determination. I went back to 19.28 and 19.29, which talks about how we administer the fees, but how do we determine a production company comes to 29 Palms, they'll filming for 7 days, where do I find what that fee would be?
That's a good question. Of course, we haven't established a fee yet.
Okay,
To start with, we probably recommend that we'd use the existing temporary use permit fee to
Okay.
get, just as a starting point.
Oh. I mean-
How much is that?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
we
pretty
have
minimal.
we have a film permit fee already. I think it's $165 on private property, and just over $300 if you're on public property.
Mm-hmm.
So we would probably use that same fee for the minor, and then we would have to establish a fee for the major permit. But fees are never included in the development code, so we do have an adopted fee schedule.
okay. So, getting back to my question, if a production was to require closing some streets, use of the sheriff's department, that all would be included in,
Now, what would
Yeah.
happen in that particular instance, and other jurisdictions do it this way too,
yeah,
is if they require extra fire or police or anything else, that is an additional expense.
right, understand. Okay, but okay, I have no more question.
I have another one. For K, filming permit activity may not exceed a total of 90 days at one location in one calendar year. Why? If it's taking longer? I know from my experience in watching movies, they don't usually like to go this long, but if it needed it, is that just like an exception?
These are a standard, put it this way, these would be our template conditions. If
Mhm.
someone were to come in and say, we actually need 120 days because we're filming the next Ben-Hur or something, or the next Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings, we could modify that one.
Or like if it was a series and they were gonna be out here filming continuous in certain locations?
If we have the latest reality TV show that
Right.
wants to film here, then this standard condition could be modified.
Okay.
I had a couple questions. So I don't see anywhere in here where it's kind of limiting areas or permitting adult filming. Can we bring that up to maybe the city attorney to see if we can limit that particular activity? Because I'm not quite certain that kind of fits with the overall.
Didn't you say like inside a private residence was,
That
it's
would-
not part of a permit?
Yeah,
Right.
But you're talking if there's a huge production?
Sure, or,
Okay.
somebody's backyard with a nice pool.
Oh,
That goes to
We
plan,
can,
doesn't
we can.
is it a
certainly-
private residence considered, so it's, that's a fair question.
So maybe we just don't have it on public property.
yeah, I'm not familiar with the
The
business, but most likely it would be done within a studio, and I don't think then this permit fee would be affected.
You would think, but till they're filming in a backyard next to your grandkid's house,
Right.
you're not all that happy with it.
Understood. We
it's-
can
it's-
certainly ask that question of our city attorneys. We try to be as vague as far as the exact content of the filming, because we as a government can't regulate it. But there are other special federal regulations with free speech and all that that we can certainly look into how this would.
Right, but I mean, we don't allow adult bookstores in downtown.
No, we do allow adult businesses, and adult businesses are allowed in industrial areas.
In the industrial
Areas,
areas.
but, yeah.
But if I wanted to take out a film permit to film an adult activity in downtown, in the backyard of a house I'm renting,
I don't think it would be approved. If that was to come out I think that kind of things would come out in the application fee, or in the application, wouldn't it?
but why wouldn't it be approved? I haven't broken any of the regulations. I've followed all the
I
things.
don't, the thing about it is, I think that would have to be addressed in the application process.
Right, but. To Keith's point, he's not regulating or patrolling what is being filmed. He's
Filmed.
just issuing like, you're not getting like a synopsis of the film. You're just like, this is my location, these are my check marks of conditions of approval.
Right, but
Yeah.
if I want to do that in a downtown or in Sunmore Estates, in my backyard, I've checked all the boxes.
Well, they can't violate,
What's
they
a-
can't violate
Kind of.
indecent exposure laws, okay?
Well,
And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about them
Well,
violating another law.
There is a recent Facebook
Yeah.
post about a family in their home that was terribly disturbed by noise and other things that were emanating from their neighbor. And they made the point that they had children and grandchildren. And I thought it was a valid point. I mean, it was based on, I think it was really going to the Airbnb, but I think that, we can extrapolate it to this kind of conversation.
it's just something I would, if we could
Okay.
So we should ask the
ask
city
the
attorney
city
about it.
attorney if we can.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, I wouldn't say extreme urgency to
Right.
pass this. So if the
Okay.
commission wants us to run this by, outside of the city attorney, that's perfectly fine. And you're both right. I mean, in the sense that we can't regulate content, and and other adult activities are regulated in other ways.
Yeah.
So,
Right, a noise ordinance.
yeah, and we know that there have been activities in hotels, that people rent out 2 or 3 hotel rooms and do their activities and things like that. So, yeah, it's a tricky issue.
Well, what I would like to do is, do we have any other comments? Because I'll open this up to public comment, and then I'll bring it back to us.
I only have one question, and I know that we spoke in a study session about Airbnbs, and so I just want you to remind me, where is that getting split off to? With regards to, I'm going to filming and temporary use permits.
Okay, so right now, temporary use permits includes film permits.
Right,
So what we're proposing to do is split those off.
right.
So,
Short-term rentals, I should have said, I'm sorry.
so with short-term rentals and VHRs, that's gonna be part of the later on discussion.
But this doesn't limit them from renting an Airbnb and filming any kind of production in that Airbnb.
If you read it, it says if it's done inside, it's not, this isn't effective.
Right,
And I
it-
went
but
to a
if,
different issue, a
if the
separate issue.
concern is the noise or what's going on and it's disturbing the community, that's why we have that number that you can call to have something done about the noise disturbance, perhaps.
Right.
I mean, if you want to address, we can talk about that if we want to address adult.
I will say that that is an issue of discussion that's gonna
But I
bring up
think
in the
there are
workshop
other
later.
laws that are going to be involved if they were to do something outside or
Yeah,
creating a nuisance in some manner, shape, or form. There are other laws that cover that. And what we're talking about here is just like, okay, we want to see who's filming inside 29 Palms. Do they have a permit?
and
You know,
if
and
they
how do we
need to have
support the
fire
production?
department or
Right, yeah.
sheriff or whatever else, so.
Right. To control that activity and to better control that activity. Okay.
So,
Any
Yeah.
more before I open it up to public comment?
That didn't answer my question, though.
which one?
It's going to go over to the short-term rental issue.
Right,
Discussion.
so one of the items
We pulled both.
I have planned to discuss at later on today is,
Item
Right,
4.
so it won't show up in these.
it won't show up in here,
That's
but it'll
what I'm
show up in
asking.
it might show up in the VHR regulations. Maybe,
Okay,
depending on the direction of,
Okay.
but I don't want to get there yet.
okay.
No, and I don't want us to either. I just want to make sure we're not seeing it where it's
It's,
going to be.
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I'm now opening it to public for comment. Would there anybody who'd like to comment on this item number, film permits? Okay, I now close it, and I bring it back up here. Does anybody want to make a motion or a suggestion or
I'll motion that the planning commission, go ahead and see this as the project exempt from CEQA and adopt the resolution and then forward the recommendation for city council for adoption of the ordinance for, 1935.
I'll second. Okay, roll call vote?
Commissioner Dixon?
Aye.
Commissioner Leslie?
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana?
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker?
Nay.
Chair Krushat?
Aye.
4-1 approved.
Sorry, Shelley, I said that the longest possible way.
I will double check with the city attorney before it goes to city council.
Next item, number 3, is temporary use permits. And I will turn it to staff.
Right, and this is a twin item to the one we just saw, since we're splitting off, making edits to the temporary use ordinance to recognize film permits. The draft ordinance you see before you is actually recognition of splitting off film permits, and that's the extent of the edits we're making to the temporary use permit section. So, again, we're recommending that you find the project exempt from CEQA, adopt the resolution, and forward the recommendation for approval of this particular development code amendment.
Any questions from the commission for staff?
I have one real quick one. With regards to renewals, like for the farmer's market,
Good one.
can they renew, do they have to renew each year, or, because it doesn't, that I read,
They have a CUP.
but it talks specifically in here about farmers markets as one of the temporary use activity. Number 2 is farmers markets.
But they
If you-
specifically have a conditional use permit.
If you apply under the temporary use permit for a farmer's market, then you are limited to 4 events per year, 7 days per event. And yes, you would have to renew every year. The existing farmer's market got a conditional use permit, which carries with the land, so they don't have to renew that.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay. Any more questions from the commission for staff? Then I'll go ahead and open it to public comment. Do I have anybody who would like to comment on temporary use permits? Then I will close public comment. Oh. Yes, please.
I'm Steven. I just wanted to know what the temporary use permits, so in order to be at the farmer's market, you have to get a temporary use permit, and it's only good 4 times a year? Is that the question? I mean, is that the?
No, if you wanted to do your own farmer's market
Oh, okay.
under
I
a
see.
temporary use permit,
Okay.
it would be 4 times a year.
Okay.
If you wanted to be a participant at the current farmer's market,
Yeah.
you would just contact the operator.
Okay, cool. That's it.
All right, thank you. Any more questions or comments from the public? Then I will close it and bring it back to the table. Do I have a motion?
I motion that we find the project exempt from CEQA and adopt the resolution and forward recommendation to city council for approval of the ordinance.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Dixon?
Aye.
Commissioner Leslie?
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana?
Aye.
Vice Chair Walker?
Aye.
Chair Krushat?
Aye.
5-0 approved.
All right, the next item, discussion and potential action items.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go with you first, Keith, and then I'll ask the commissioners.
Okay, discussion and potential action items. I don't have any of those, but I do have a community development update, if you want to go to that one, if you like.
Which one?
The next item.
Okay, let's just go to update then. Thank you.
I had something.
Okay. Excuse me.
I was at a birthday party this week at Knott Sky Park. I was asked if I could ask the city if there's any way that we could do some sort of something at the park for piñatas to make it easy for, because they had to hook a rope up on the tree, and it really probably wasn't all that great for the tree that is existing there. So they said, hey, why doesn't the city do something that I can put my pinata up here and whack it around and make the kids happy? So I said I would ask at our next meeting.
I will, we'll run that by our parks people.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Any other comments or discussion items? All right, then I'd like to move over to Community Development Director updates, please.
Okay, so we've had quite a few previous workshops, and I thought I corrected the animation on that. Anyway, we do have some updates. You're going to see some of them here shortly. You know, today's film permits was a workshop that we had previously. I'm anticipating having a definitive answer on two-story homes in the city by May the 2nd. Where I'm planning on bringing back downtown specific plan allowable uses and the side street standards by May 16th, along with the garage discussion we had previously. Downtown circulation and downtown wayfinding and campgrounds, those are more complex issues. We're picking off the low-hanging fruit first. So that's where we're headed here in the next couple of planning commissions.
Quick question on the two-story homes. Is that going back to see how it relates to new state law that's come out concerning construction?
That's exactly right. And the
Okay.
state has passed a whole slew of state laws.
Right.
And we definitely don't run afoul of those.
Yeah.
So we're treading carefully here.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission for staff?
No.
Okay. Next item will be a study session, and I know this is a very popular issue. I would like to reiterate that as we go into this is a study session. You will get to witness the discussion between staff and the commission. After that discussion, I will open it up to public comment. And then after public comment, I will bring it back to the staff and the commission. So if you go ahead and
Yeah,
start.
and I'd like to add to that, there were 13 issues that we've identified in the staff report. And staff is going to have no objection and might make a suggestion that if these start running long, we can definitely have more than one workshop to discuss these issues that we don't get to tonight. So this is not the end-all, be-all workshop. We're not mandating that it be so. Just throwing it out there. Excuse me. So city council, and I'm going to ask for direction here from the chair. Would you like me to take these one issue at a time, or would you like me to identify the first several issues? And discuss one of these issues at a time, or how would you like to do this?
Let's discuss each one at a time.
Each one at a time. Okay, fair enough. So the first item of the city council asked us to take a look at is a reduction in the number of vacation home rental permits per entity. Currently, that issue is, currently our development code says a maximum of 5 per entity. If the commission would like, I can bring up the existing codes to see what it actually says, and we can have that discussion.
Sounds good.
Go ahead, Leslie. Mhm. No, I think we know it, as it stands right now, it's any entity can have up to 5 licenses, is that correct?
That is correct.
And our limit is still 500?
That is correct.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's entirely visible on the screen here, but this is the issue in question.
Okay.
The first one is letter B. So very sorry. So these are the issues here that I've highlighted, section of the code. In particular, what we're talking about is letter B here, the number of vacation rental licenses within the city of 29 Palms that any one persons, or business entity with financial interest can own is limited to 5. So the city council asked us to revisit this particular issue as per the number and or any sort of language we need to add to this section.
Well, you discuss each one individually. I'll bring up, because I pulled up what the amendments were to the development code, vacation home rentals from last year. And that was after we had a committee that met 9 times, from 2 to 3 hours per. And some of those things that were suggested were adopted, others were not. And I would remind people that even back then, we had a cap, but it was based upon a percentage of single-family houses. However, the City council determined that they just wanted a flat 500 rate. When we had the discussion, the feeling was if you're already gonna limit the number of permits within the organization, and the feeling, or I remember the feeling as being, is like, okay, then let's kind of spread the wealth a little bit. I mean, you don't want somebody walking in and buying up a bunch of homes and having an ersatz hotel. That was the big issue. So if you're only gonna have 500, then the limit was looked at as 2 per entity, okay? Now, the other ones would be, and I still think that's a pretty good policy, if we're gonna have a limit. I still prefer the old ordinance, but I'm flexible, I respond to the way things are going, and so having a limit and limiting then how many that any one entity can have, I think would be a positive thing. Any other questions?
I'm not sure what city council had with the issue as far as what was decided before, but if this is to change, what would happen to those who have
They-
Those would be continued to have them.
until the end of their permit, or until they continue to renew them,
Well,
or?
that would be something we'd have to write on the code.
Because the new code could regulate what they could or could not renew, correct?
Okay,
Wouldn't the
Or they
city-
would be grandfathered under the
Well,
old code if that was
Yeah.
changed, or
wouldn't the
is it?
city-
Yeah.
City
yeah.
council have to do decide they're non-conforming and decide what they want to do with those?
well, that is a regulation you could add to this. For instance, I'm making this up, I'm not recommending it. You could say that that number is no longer going to be 5, it could be 2. I'm not recommending anything, I'm just putting a scenario out there. If the commission wants to do that, the commission could also recommend that other language be added that says those existing can continue to be renewed.
So
To
what's
address
wrong-
that particular
Well, then
issue.
you'd have to change the cap, because it's not gonna change anything, right? If those existing can continue, you're just saying that any more entities after the 500 cap would
We're
not
not
be.
talking about the cap.
But.
I
you-
know what you're saying,
yeah.
so let me go ahead, because I'm not gonna recuse myself on this issue with regards to short-term rentals. And I actually don't think that because I have some, I have many. I have 5. And the commentary today about a question mark to my beliefs, there's a question mark about what I believe. So I believe in civil rights, I believe in human rights, and I believe in property rights. I don't think it would be fair, because my 5 would be grandfathered in, and because there's a set limit, and because we have other issues that are coming up that have to do with how many permits you could have on a lot, that you can't almost separate those out for other people, and I think it would be terribly unfair. So from that point of view, from a fairness point of view, I mean, I have my 5. It doesn't matter to me on this whole issue of recusal. What it does have to do with is fairness and property rights, and I agree with you. There's already a limit of 500. You would have to strategically figure out how you were gonna do that. Goes to the carport issue, it might go to ADU issues, there's a lot of issues.
Also, wasn't the concern that I just get a different LLC name and now I own it under something else, and I could technically own all 500, and I just have 500 LLCs that I pay for every year?
If
That-
you
that
wanted to
would-
go through and develop 500 LLCs.
But I
you
mean,
wouldn't
I'm,
get a
I'm,
permit, there are no permits
okay, let's just say
available.
No,
30.
the point I was trying to make is like, if it was strictly we're allowing just economic conditions to determine the number of vacation home rentals, which is what we're kind of finding anyway. But we've already made the statement that, okay, we're gonna limit the number. And once we enter into that, my feeling is, once you enter into that, then yeah, you've got to sit there and say, okay, spread the wealth a little bit, allow other people to have it. You would be grandfathered in. And I have no problem with Eileen commenting on this, because we are just an advisory board. We don't decide the law. And having multiple different opinions at this advisory board, I think is fine. So I
Definitely.
agree with you that you don't have to recuse yourself because you are a vacation home owner rep.
And I also did verify
Yeah.
before I took this position with
Yeah.
through the city attorney that I
Yep.
didn't specifically.
We
to
don't
this
make the
issue.
laws.
No, I just think
Yeah,
other people
so-
need to know, Jim.
Okay, that's why, and that's
There are
why,
concerns,
that's
I'm
why I
just-
reiterated it.
let's put it
It's
out
like, this is, we don't make the law, this is an advisory, we advise the city council, they make the law.
So I would go with based on the fact that it was capped at 500, and they're saying in 2030 on the next census, that's when it would be rediscussed,
Yeah.
reevaluated. And because there's actually maybe a drop in interest in people having short-term rentals out here, which I think is really interesting,
Yeah.
because it has to do with how we're viewed as a city, not being, I don't know how to put it. But I think it's really interesting because it has to do with how we're viewed as a city, not being, I think it's really interesting because it has to do with how we're viewed as a city, not being, I don't know how to put it. But I think it's really interesting because it has to do with how we're viewed as a city, not being welcoming to businesses and new ideas. Maybe it's not a good look sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that whole market force,
Yeah.
about 5 to 1, what's available, you know, that's the way I view it.
Yeah.
I mean, there aren't 5 available.
Well, the only thing I would add when we're discussing that is the fact that, and when you're looking at the 500, and I'm going to express my opinion, I thought the 500 was kind of draconian, especially with not looking at it for another 10 years.
Exactly.
I think if we're going to be a growing community, and the thing about it is there's balance in vacation home rentals, and everyone seems to, and a lot of evil things get thrown on vacation home rentals, but remember that a lot of derelict houses have been redone. They bring in close to $1 million in TOT taxes, which help this community pay for a lot of things for the community as a whole, and they promote tourism. And we've always, since I've been in this community, and since my family's been involved in this community, tourism was one of the big things we wanted to promote.
Definitely.
And I agree with you on something. As long as a homeowner is not, or a property owner is not doing anything illegal, unsafe, or unhealthy, I have that feeling that they should be allowed to do something with their property.
And it's interesting because I have different issues with regards to how people purchase their homes.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I did not come into this town and buy a home that had a tenant that had been in that home. I just didn't, that's not my conduct.
Yeah.
So I know that my Utah properties I read ahead a little are going to be addressed. Somebody wrote a letter specifically about my properties. And they were derelict. They were an embarrassment. They're across the street from the visitor center before we have the new visitor center. And they're beautiful. I offer them at cheap prices, so I have girls in the military coming out to see the $65 a night for a girlfriend to come see a boyfriend in the military. Young families with babies. I feel like some people are offering a service to this town that not only services themselves. So that's how I look at it. And plus, you know, I came in here saying I had to build an infrastructure with regards to Bistro 29, taking that over and building out the bar. So I just think that, you know, we should take a step back and remember people are coming in for right reasons. People are leaving for wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So,
All right, thank you. I'd like to open it up to the other commissioners if they have a comment concerning this issues in particular.
Well, I mean, actually I do. So I'm looking at it here and it says we're limiting to 5. So why are we now coming back to this issue when it's already written? What prompted this to now be a concern to limit it to less than 5?
Well, I'll give you some historic background. The original ad hoc committee came in and recommended if you're going to set a limit, and the limit was 12% of the single-family homes within the city of, which was reviewed every 2 years. That was our recommendation. They came back with 500. We also recommended that you limit the number per entity to 2. The only reason it was,
I don't remember it that way.
well, I'll tell you
Yeah, I
what.
don't remember from hearing that either.
I have the staff report. We can go over the staff report. If you remember something different, that's fine.
I thought we
Anyways,
had
it was limited. Okay, so here's our chance. It came back. Somebody brought up the concern because there was somebody who was getting multiple licenses, so that's why it came back. They brought it before the city council. The city council put it back to us. I'm giving some history on what I remember from the ad hoc committee, and then I'm opening up to the commissioners to bring their point.
wasn't your question, why is it coming up right now?
Yes, because originally I
have
thought
a
we did
complaint?
not open it or limit it to 5 or any. The city
Right.
council came back and said we're limiting it to 5.
Right.
So they have final say, so why are we back here now to address this when it was already addressed at the,
Because other members of the community brought up, and the committee said, okay, let's take a look at that. Maybe we want to lower it to 5. So it was put back on us by the city council to relook at this issue.
So
And-
why is it up for reduction, I guess is.
Well, yeah,
what
so
I'm asking.
the question has come up to Commissioner Pahana's point that someone can have multiple LLCs and get VHRs under each of those LLCs.
Couldn't we put something in there that can't be allowed?
But isn't that one financial interest with the same financial interest? I might have 5,
Well, you can look up an
LLCs.
LLC to see who the owner is.
but I have the 5 LLCs. All the financial interest is coming to me. Wouldn't that be, I can't.
We can, and that's perhaps one of the questions that can be clarified in here, because because technically it's a business entity.
Right.
you know, you have First Street LLC, Second Street LLC, Third Street LLC, you know, and et cetera. You know, and one person may be a president of one and a vice president of another and a, you know, partner in another.
Well, the only thing that
They're
requires,
not
'cause
all the owner.
we require the VHR to get a business license so that we can do a TOT collection.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really a commercial entity as you're describing a commercial entity like some other commercial entities. I mean, we allow commercial entities inside residential areas. I mean, if you have
Well,
yeah.
And I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but we do have several VHRs that are listed under, not under an individual name, but
I
under-
understand, they're listed under an LLC. I
An
got it,
LLC.
I understand that. But the reason why we have a business license was more towards the collection of TOT taxes.
But the concern brought back to your point is that city council said, hey, planning commissioners, based off public comment, what we're hearing, you know, and the concern that, well, these LLCs are being created to maximize the amount that they could get because it's limited to 5. And we're only checking like, oh, that's a different name, that's a different name. We're not digging into who's actually getting all this money. So I think so we have 13 issues to get through. Here's this first one. Do we want to recommend to city council for a change, a reduction, the same? Did we have any concerns?
and
And
I
we
want-
still have to open it
And I
Open a
wanna
public
yeah.
on
Well-
each one, is that what we're doing?
I don't know if.
I don't, do you want, okay, this is, okay, if we spend this long on each point, you're right, we're gonna be going on all evening.
Right, and I
Yeah.
will say this too. This is not we do not have a revised ordinance in front of anyone
Right.
here
Right.
tonight.
Right.
It's just kind of like given.
It's the planning commission workshop to take public comment and give staff direction
Yeah.
to come up with any revisions
Okay.
that may be requested.
All right.
And then we will have to come back with a full public hearing later on,
Yeah.
once all the workshops are done, to actually formalize these comments into any ordinance revision.
Well, I guess if we're not addressing the 500, then based on what my feelings about this whole subject of fairness, I would say then we don't address the 5.
Okay.
So,
I would say unless there's some way that you're going to track down who these owners are of the LLCs, like I'd leave it at 5.
I mean, one of the things that was brought up in the discussions was the fact that, okay, then somebody can come in, have multiple, and basically run an ersatz motel without running a motel.
true, but we're almost
And
at
then,
500 permits. So you
you
see,
know,
if we're not
so I'm-
changing the 500 number, it's
Yeah.
almost a moot point, a lot of these issues.
Well, I have no problem with relooking at the 500 limit.
No, I don't think we should touch the 500
No,
limit. That was
yeah.
upsetting to the community.
Yeah,
The
okay,
community seems to be happy with that number.
yeah.
I don't think we should increase it, that's for sure. People
know.
It's
will
not one of the
freak out.
13 things the city council has us
Yeah.
to look at either.
Okay.
Oh, good point.
Chair Khrushchev?
So,
But
can
they
we
added
move?
7.
Do you
Go
mind
ahead.
if I say something real quick?
Yeah.
So I've been processing the application since late 2014. And so we do look at the articles of organization and the operating agreements to find out who those owners are so that we can cross-check to see if, you know, those individuals, we always try to make sure, you know, that we're looking at the 5
Okay.
entities.
Do you have them
So-
bring it in, or are you checking on the SOS site?
We have them provide us a copy.
Okay, so we could also cross-check that if it was,
Yep.
should become a problem.
Yes.
Okay. I think we've gone over this point enough, and I'd like to move on to the next one.
But did we give you enough kind of, 'cause I don't have a personal problem with the 5.
I don't either.
Okay, and there's no language changes that are recommended?
I mean,
Okay.
staff, to Shelley's point right now,
That's fine.
she's doing what she can to cross-check to make sure that it's not one guy having 12 different ones, and we're almost at 500, so.
Yeah, and what's the commission's preference? You want to take public comment after each discussion, or? at
I'd
the
like to
end?
hold public comment till the end, otherwise we'll be here.
We should do them. Because if we
When-
don't finish them all, we might have to put off our session.
No, what I'm gonna do is when we get through all of our
If we
points,
get
then we
through.
open it up to public comment, and then we'll hold public comment. Because a lot of public comment may be addressing this or that. How many other points do we have to go through? Let me control.
13.
12.
12.
12 more.
Sorry.
12 more points. All right. Well, and my view is that the public sees the 12 points that we looked at, then we open it up. Or we can open it up to public comment now,
I think maybe we should.
and then we continue to work, and then that's it.
And if it's too late, then we have a
Okay.
second
I
session.
think what is being asked,
Yeah.
Chair, is that we just discussed at length this 5,
Yeah,
maybe hear from the public on
Public.
the 5, and then
Alright.
come back to the next item, and then just kind of keep a
Exactly.
cadence like that. just so that we're hearing
You
it
mean, you
while
want me
it's
to
fresh.
open it up to public comment 13 times?
Please.
Yes, if we get there, if we're like,
But you
hey,
see, some of the
that's a-
public
that's-
comment doesn't specifically go over there, just like
They'll scream at us. It's fine.
the general, there's the general ones, which we can.
Yeah.
But what I can do is read into, I'll open up the public comment, read into the record what we have from the emails, and then I'll go right down the list.
Yeah,
I
3
mean,
minutes at a time.
we've got the 3 plus 2,
Let's get going.
and then, of course, they're all general, they're not
Okay.
specific. So
I see what
why
you're
don't I
saying.
open it up
Yeah.
to
Hear what
public
everybody
comment,
wants to
and then we'll
say
go back
about-
through.
okay.
The public gets to see our discussion, okay? So I'm gonna open it up to public comment, have them make their, have that done, and then we bring it back up here and we finish up. Because then we will have gotten their comment.
Right.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, in the spirit of a workshop, yeah.
Okay.
We just want to hear all the opinions.
Right. And if it was I would like to see a workshop like that on like a Saturday morning when we have like 3 and 4 hours. All right, so what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to public comment. And I'm going to read into the record the 3 emails that I have. The first one is from a Rebecca, no last name. It says foxy@thedandyfox.com. Hi, Diane. I would like to comment about STR planning. I've lived on Sereno Drive for almost 5 years, and in the past year, there has been a proliferation of STRs on my street. I have counted at least 7 on Sereno Drive, plus a few on Altaloma, the street north of Serrano, as well as 3 cottages on Utah in the same area. This area has become a bit of a hotel district instead of a neighborhood. I think that the number of STRs in the neighborhood or in the same street should be taken into consideration. It starts to change the neighborhood if a lot of the houses are empty most of the time. There's also the number of strangers coming into the residential area and folks having parties. I know there are numbers to call on the houses, but I don't really want to walk down a dark road at night to figure out which of the 13 STOs are being a problem. My other concern is housing stability with rentals being turned into STRs. I'm on disability, so it'd be very difficult for me to move if my landlord decides to turn my house into an STR. I'm sure they'd make more money than continuing to rent to me. Thanks, I just want to let the city know about what's happening on my street, Rebecca. Okay. The next item was from a Deborah Shea. You've all heard from city residents by now most of our objections to operating commercial entities in a residential neighborhood. The argument is that these de facto hotels are being used like residents. By common sense, these are commercial uses. Commercial use is to make money. The profiteers in this case are VHR owners and the city. I still don't understand how that benefits the rest of us who live and work here full-time. I wonder how many investors from out of town, out of state, or even out of country have even been to 29 Palms. They are not vested in the community. The negative impacts of VHRs are borne by its permanent residents. Every night in a VHR is a vacation, but I'm not on vacation, I live here. But the City Council and Planning Commission have responsibility to its citizens and taxpayers over investors and private interests. Has the city ever done a cost analysis? Are they really profitable when so many cities are phasing out VHRs? What are the costs of hiring additional staff to process the requests, inspections, and enforcement? Who pays for the additional needs for public safety and response and city infrastructure? A quick cost analysis of my neighborhood reveals that 3 permanent residents pay for and maintain our private road. Not 1 cent comes from the 7 VHRs, yet they get to benefit from it. I urge the city to conduct a cost analysis of VHRs and to make those results known to all. I also feel planning commissioners and city council members should make known whether they personally own a VHRs within the city. Those individuals should recuse themselves from discussion and voting on that which they themselves receive financial gains. It's not because I may agree or disagree with the member. It's a conflict of interest in a matter of political ethics. Lastly, I feel the city must have a better system in place for dealing with reporting of and enforcement of VHR violations. Earlier this year, I had occasion to report several violations on one property on one weekend, while the city has a hotline and online reporting system. None of those worked on that weekend. I tried the old-fashioned way. I picked up the telephone and called the city. I left several messages and not one call was returned. I then took to email, and after several more weeks, I got a response. The total time to respond to my concerns was over 2 months. This is just not acceptable. I want to thank all the city leaders. You have a big job to fill to try to balance everyone's concerns. Sincerely, Deborah Shea. And this one, April 18th, 2023, from Heather Vincent. Dear Planning Commission, I'm one of the first VHR permit holders and a longtime supporter of VHR regulation, helping draft the 2015 regulation as a researcher of sharing economy. There are some issues within the recent regulation revision that I ask you to address. I support reduced insurance requirement and request you revert to our previous regulation rules that does not require insurance if VHRing exclusively through a platform that already has insurance. Example, Airbnb and AirCover. VHR ownership limits. Grandfather those at the current cap and reduce it to 3 for future VHRs, meaning 3 per person or per entity. Explore neighborhood caps, but do not privilege business-focused VHRs against casual VHRs. Eliminate the ability to build straight to VHR business in residential neighborhoods. New VHR construction should be treated as new business construction, especially since VHRs reside in the fabric of the residential neighborhood. Make all new SFH construction, single-family housing, construction wait 2 years before it can be VHR'd. That's what a residential mortgage requires. You to live in the house before they let you, before you can leave it. Support casual VHR operators, and I ask you to create a homestay or casual VHR category or VHR permit, which has the original ethos of Airbnb and the sharing economy. Casual VHR operators are not run for business or profit first. I have written a detailed overview of the casual VHR and the unintended negative consequences of the most recent regulation changes to this use case. I would be happy to meet and go over the casual VHR scenarios where someone might not want to VHR for business reasons like illness, financial change, hybrid living, renting to friends and family. Thank you for the listening, Heather Vincent. So that concludes all the letters and emails that we've gotten. Now I'll go to from the public. Could I have John Talley, what is that? Is that Jules? Jones, okay. Mr. Jones?
Thank you for allowing me to speak on this issue. I want to say hold on just a second. There we go. I want to say I support the Planning Commission's efforts to revise these regulations. I think it's imperative to do so because the purpose-built VHR industry has evolved quickly and it's using its savvy to get around some of our current and prior regulations. I want to comment on 3 of the recommendations specifically. Recommendation number 4 on the issue of single-family dwellings that are purpose-built essentially to be hotels. I believe this should be disallowed. It is not in the spirit of the original intention of the vacation home rental model. It also erodes a sense of community and does nothing to alleviate housing shortages. With regard to recommendation number 5 on the subject of density, I think we need to also include an idea of proximity. I would like to see the commission work to create language that prevents adjacent properties from each having VHR licenses. I refer to parcels that share a boundary or touch at the corners. And finally, regarding recommendation number 6, I also believe that there should be restrictions on allowing VHRs in the national park boundary overlay. This area should have more protections, generally. It certainly should not be available for any kind of commercial use. So structures put up in order to be VHRs should especially be disallowed here. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Russ Cohn, K-O-H-N.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm not opposed to VHRs. We live in a residentially zoned area here in the city of 29 Palms. And it is zoned, I looked at the zoning, it is zoned residential for single family residents. Recently, we've had a lot of VHRs purchase a property, or people purchase the property and turn them right away into VHRs. That is abuse of the zoning laws. They're making them commercial right away. I agree with the last letter you read. We should have 2 years of someone should reside in the home before they are allowed to apply for a VHR permit. And those who build new single-family residence should do the same thing. Once they get their certificate of occupancy, they should wait 2 years prior to applying for a VHR permit. These are residences. We lost a family, we lost people who lived there with kids, and another guy was there for 20 years, and now we have parties on the weekends. The intent of these people who buy solely for commercial does not meet the zoning requirements. So that is similar to the Homestead Act that they had out here, the 2-year wait. I think it's a good way to do this, because you're just seeing people build and they're doing commercial businesses in a residentially zoned area, and it's wrong. It's good that we're working with this, and it should be. I want to say that we should keep the 500 max limit. I think for new people who aren't grandfathered into entities, because if you own up to 5, that's still a large business. If you can own 5 properties and make a lot of money off of that, you have a nice business right there. Not all of us could say we own 5 properties as a single entity. That's pretty much all I have to say. That people who go into residential zone neighborhoods, it's a blatant disregard for the intent. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Next, I have Jamie Abels. Jamie? There you are.
Jamie Abels, thank you to the servicemen for the opportunity to speak here today. I don't envy you guys at all. And I appreciate how you're working together and that you have some diverse comments there. I really like the Planning Commission. I haven't been in here for years. I actually sat up there as a planning commissioner when we used to just have some tables around, and it was real easy. People would raise their hand and we'd communicate real easily. I appreciate the other guys' comments, although I'm kind of leaning on the other way. I don't see why we even have a limit on things. I'm kind of more of a supply and demand guy. If you have an Airbnb and you run it properly and you take care of the property, you're going to survive and you're going to go on. If you don't take care of it, you don't run it properly, you're not going to survive. The limits, it'll find its own balance. Also, you're taking away an opportunity for somebody to invest by limiting the numbers. I have an Airbnb across the street from where I live, and it's been there for more than a couple of years. It was an okay property. It was fair. It was nice. They've cleaned it up. It has a pool in the back. Has quality people there all the time. I've heard laughter over there one time, no loud music, nothing's ever happened, and I was happy to hear the laughter that was going on, in the Airbnb. I can sure see the sides of somebody else where they've got one on each side of them, and they've been living there for 20 years, and now it's not a home to them. I also own some apartments, and I don't understand the limiting of, if somebody has a duplex and they want to make those units Airbnb, I don't know why we're limiting that. I've built duplexes, I have curb and gutter, and I've done everything properly. And across the street, there was some old things that have been put together, and they're able to Airbnb, but I'm not allowed to. I don't really plan on Airbnb-ing, and I don't really care to do that. But if I wanted to, I'd like to have the opportunity. And it kind of doesn't make sense to me, because when you're Airbnb-ing, you're saying, well, you can't do it in an apartment situation where people are moving out quite a bit, but you can do it where you have long-term residences. So I don't understand that exactly. The other thing is, if I was an investor, and I'm going to come in here on a Friday and enjoy the town, check it out, see if I want to invest here or not, and I'm going to go explore the national park, and I'm going to come back down here, I can't talk to the city on a Friday. So I think that somebody should be around. If the city's not going to be open 5 days a week, somebody should be around for some more technical questions. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abels. Next, we have, Susan, I can't read your writing at the, is it Deplo? Deplo.
Good evening, everyone, again. I'm not sure if Keith is going to call me up, so I'm going to just touch briefly about the Good Neighbor class, but I can answer questions about that later. I'm going to speak kind of quickly so I get my 3 minutes in. I'm currently the instructor under the Good Neighbor class with the Desert Beacon in partnership with the city to present Good Neighbor and good practices to new and old licensees. It's utilizing their resources, meaning the Desert Beacon, and then I'm a contractor. So just in case there's questions about money, it's more of a labor of love. Just if you're curious on the count, I can provide that to you if you ask, but we're looking about half of which have been through the Good Neighbor class so far. There's been some attrition, which I think Shelley can talk about. We keep kissing 500, but we're not really getting to it. So we got about 203 or 5 current licenses that have been through, maybe 220 or so that have been through the whole program. And I can't speak to the other provider through Copper Mountain College because I didn't have that information. The class has morphed from just being good practices, but we talk about TOT collection, other municipal code changes that have taken place, like domestic pet changes to the code, or the upcoming organic waste that's going to be happening, as well as like renewals and safety instructions. So it's not just like be friendly. It kind of covers various things. Regarding entities, I do have that count. I was kind of hoping that it was going to be presented to you. Count. 29 have two, these are people. Currently 29 people have 2, 6 people have 3, 2 people have 4, 2 people have 5, 1 person has 6. Of the higher count, of the 2 meaning 4, 1 person lives locally and managed. The other 5 and 6 are sitting here. And again, so any of the 2 to 1, so of the 5 people that have more than 4 or sorry, I'm using my time. Of the 5 people that have greater than 4 licenses, 4 of which live and manage locally. These are not corporations. These are like people in town that are doing this. And Shelley already discussed that the LLCs, we can kind of combat that with order of operation, which she can get annually with renewals. So we can figure out who's got these licenses. Density to neighborhoods, I'm a little bit concerned that that can affect property values. I'm a buy and hold girl myself. I've had some properties in 29 Palms since 2005, but I'd be pretty bummed out if my houses in Indian Cove are no longer of value.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, Mr. Mike Peters.
Hello. 3 minutes, I guess. Thanks. I moved here in 1978. I think my parents took me out of a tropical island in Okinawa and moved me to the desert in 1978, and woke up wondering where the heck I was, but found that I grew to love this place. This place is awesome. I moved away and moved back here a few months ago, and sooner than planned. Both of our parents live up here. My in-laws and my parents, and moved up and bought a house so that we could be closer to them as we kind of transition to retirement. We intend to Airbnb our house, and so on occasion, and so whoever wrote the letter about casual VHRs is kind of where we're at, and what our intent is. Trying to understand the entity versus individual Airbnb in their house. first of all, the city's been great. Shelley has been fantastic in helping out, navigate all of the individual, and then Susan and the Good Neighbor class was fantastic as well. And I think it should be noted that in that class, there was a lot of questions and comments with good intent, wanting to know how they could do better. People that are either applying or renewing VHRs could do better and could make it more effective. And so it's not I think an all or nothing enterprise is sucking up the world kind of approach to things. And so helping individuals kind of through the process, I think, would be beneficial and helpful. Specific to some of the recommendations, I don't really know what they all are yet. We talked about one of them and then went right to public comment. The ones that are particularly of interest to me, one is the National Park Buffer Zone. My in-laws live right behind me, right up against the National Park. I live one street down off Shoshone Valley. Nobody could care more about the national park than I do. We bought the house from the guy that owned that ran the national park, and have talked in depth about it, et cetera. If there are specific rules or regulations to abide by within the buffer zone, that makes sense. If a wildlife corridor needs to be maintained, if noise, lights, et cetera, completely fine with that. But outline anything in the buffer zone makes no sense to me. It's one of our treasures of this place. It is the treasure of this place, is the national park. And being able to make that available to people to come and experience it, I think would be amiss if there was something that was written in that was contrary to that. And then, no, that's time. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And then the next one is, I hope I get this right, it looks like Rianne Waller? No. Is that? Richard? Oh, it's Richard. Is this Richard? Late entry. Okay. What's the last name? Is that Waller?
Walker.
Walker. Oh, okay. Looks like Wallear.
No relation.
I own these keyboards.
Sorry. Okay.
No relation. Just
Okay, thank you.
No relation.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
My name is Richard Walker. I own a VHR in 29 Palms. I also have property interests in San Bernardino County unincorporated and Riverside County and San Diego County. I do want to say that the city of 29 Palms does a great job with collecting TOT and general structure around VHR. So those that don't know, compared to San Bernardino or Riverside, I think they're doing a terrific job. The property we acquired was inhabited by a registered sex offender. We got it for $78,000. It had a cesspool in the back, literally. It sat on the market for months, and there's no question it's the prettiest home on the block. We've never taken a vacant day ever, and we've hosted hundreds of people that come to our community and spend way more money and do way more things for the betterment of people that work here and live in 29 than the terrible person that lived there before. So that's my experience. Of course, I'm very pro VHR. I'm a little confused as to why taking a vacant parcel and building in VHR would be a problem. It's not something I do, but if you want to talk about not touching housing stock while bringing more money into community for the subcontractors we pay, the crews that we do to maintain, and of course the people that come to spend money in our community, that makes no sense to me. The buffer zone around the national park, again, makes no sense to me. The idea is to get people to come to our community and enjoy it. The VHR economy makes that possible. If you're anti-VHR, I think it's maybe just things moving quickly, and they are. Even if you're in the space and you're profiting from it like me and my family do. Things are always changing, but a point was made earlier by the gentleman, I forgot his name. Let's let market forces take their course. It's a real slippery slope, I think, when we try and command the way things could go. We're always too slow for the market anyway. A cap on permits. I'm kicking the crap out of the people that don't know how to do this. I've never had a noise complaint ever. And those people that don't know what they're doing will fade and rent them for less and get out of the business. And guests that demand more, which they are every single day, and when I say more, cleaner, better, nicer, better surroundings, location, those people are gonna thrive and do well. So I ask for patience to the people that are against the general movement, and I ask for patience from the people that are against the general movement to also understand that there's so many great things that come from these derelict and dead properties in communities in the high desert, that it's a great thing. Just give us some time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay, I have one more to read in that came in after the meeting started, and after that, here's what I would like to do, Keith. If we could, I'll close the comments for now, temporarily. Can we bring up all the last 12 and go through them real quickly, and then take comments from the commission as a whole? And I just put this up to the other commission members if you'd like to do it that way. Or we can just go each one at a time, all 12. I mean, if we go through the 12, here's my thoughts. We go through the 12 rather quickly, and if one we want to comment on, we pick it out, we go after it, because we can move the study session on down, or we can go through each one.
I think we should go through each one very slowly, so no one in the community thinks that they are not getting the amount of
Okay.
time they deserve.
All right, then we'll do that, and then at the,
We'll reopen maybe
and then
at
reopen at the
12.
end of all 12. That's what I'd like to do. So let me go ahead and read this in. This is from a Mr. Russ Walling. Reduction the number of VHRs per entity. With putting a limit on how many VHRs an entity can own, what you are doing is putting a boot heel on the throat of the American dream. It is a further troubling that you are trying to limit private individuals from expanding to a level of real prosperity. I can understand trying to limit a large corporation from exploiting the local inventory of houses, but when that carries over to hardworking regular voters, demoralizing and reeks of totalitarianism. The current cap of 5 should be expanded, if anything, with a case-by-case scrutiny to keep the deep-pocketed corporations from swooping in on potential VHR inventory that could be going to locals and individuals. Okay, that concludes that. So right now, I'm going to close this form of the public comments, bring it back up to staff and to the commission. We'll go through the rest of the individual comments, and then I will open it back up for public comment if somebody wants to comment. Thank you.
Okay, so you'd like me to discuss each one? Okay, so the next issue was whether or not to allow units connected by carports. And again, I'm going to bring up the ordinance in particular to see what the language actually is. It's 1941-020. This is, I believe this is the particular regulation that is of concern. Vacational rental shall be limited to only those dwelling units that are physically separate, standalone, detached, single-family residential units, not attached or sharing a common wall with any other residential unit considered for the vacational rental. We do have some units that are connected, but not necessarily connected by like unit to unit, but it'd be unit, garage, or unit or carport, then unit. So the question is that the city council wants us to explore is when you have a situation where you have unit, carport, unit, is that acceptable?
Is it under one parcel, one rental? It's not
These will
like
be under one
multiple
parcel.
rentals, like I can rent this one and somebody else can rent that?
Yeah, these are under the same,
Same one permit, one rental?
well, this is under one, the idea here is that this would be under one parcel.
And you can only have one permit per parcel to rent out whatever buildings are on there? Or that's not the case?
That's another topic of conversation that is related to another topic of conversation.
I believe there's only one that is connected by a carport, correct?
What?
And I think that one was a very, lack of a better word, messy situation that kind of happened and was allowed to be approved against what the code was at the time of being single and detached. So I would say that we leave it alone and it's single family. I don't think duplexes. That's my opinion.
Well,
Well-
okay, so then let me just say, so we'll address my non-issue with the 3 on Utah. That is a magical property. Each one of those units are designated by the county and always were as single-family residences. So just so the whole duplex issue that comes up, it wasn't ever designated that way. And I came and discussed that to the city. Oh. So I had come and discussed that, but I mean, that's an issue. So this says specifically detached single-family residential units. So removing a carport doesn't necessarily mean that we're changing it for duplex. And that would be a question. Do we want to change it where a duplex can be 2 on a lot? You get 2 separate permits, owner occupied versus non-owner occupied. So that would allow to more freedom for a property owner.
Well, I remember the situation you were talking about, and because the issue was, okay, are we talking about a load-bearing wall between two living spaces?
Right, bringing it
But
back
what
around.
we had was a carport or garage space that was between. And that's where it kind of became unclear in the ordinance, which I think we said we would go back and define that, because and as Eileen has pointed out, is like, yeah, you had the county saying, no, these are 3 separate buildings. They weren't, as a duplex as one. And that was further defined. So that would be my only thing, is further defining that. If it's a carport between 2 buildings and it's not a load-bearing wall between 2 buildings or a living wall between 2 buildings, yeah,
Okay, but I'm saying then you would have to change that,
I got it, I agree.
right, on the single-family residence
Right.
part. Which that would go into the how many on lot, right? That was the.
And that's,
that-
and that's real, a lot of these issues are interrelated.
And
Yeah.
what number is that on here?
Well,
No.
we're on 2.
That's number
Right,
2.
But it deals with on the lot issue. Oh, that's your staff question.
That's staff number 1.
That's staff question.
Right, but that built to STR or whatever, or short-term rental, immediately open, had 2 buildings, and we said 1, and you rent 1, it's not individually rented.
And that's the question.
And that is staff number 1 issue. So we are going to get to that in
Okay.
detail.
So for this particular one, I wouldn't have a problem if they were two dwellings touching by a carport, renting, but they'd have to have 1 permit and they'd have to rent out the whole space. They couldn't rent out this one to party A and this one to party C. They'd have to rent it out to the same person, because they have 1 license for the whole 2 properties.
Well, then you're calling it as one, even though the county may call them 2 separate properties.
Yeah, I don't.
Then it would be multiple permits, because it's a
Then that
different
would be
property.
multiple
And
permits.
let me just tell you, I do pay multiple permits.
Right.
For each one.
Multiple permit fees.
Yeah, 3 on a lot,
Yep.
3 single-family residences.
Mm-hmm, that's
And I
the,
should, I'm not saying I shouldn't.
right, that's the
But
the
that's
separation
separate.
is their different plots.
Well, they're not.
They're all on one parcel.
It's 1 APM.
So we're,
I don't want to limit this to one. There's more than one situation where this.
Right, so
can
I'm
occur.
Okay.
saying, but then now, if you limit that on that one, I'm almost leaning the other way. Okay, so if you take away the carport problem, issue, whatever it is, then there are 2 standalone. Is it owner occupied? Are you forcing them to do an eviction, which we all know I'm really anti that. And you don't wanna force that situation if it's owner occupied, not owner occupied in another. Or do you require one to be owner occupied? Because I thought there was some rule about that a long time ago.
Well, I'm trying to put personal desires here to the side and say what would be fair. I'm trying to look at what is fair. And to me, what is fair is if it's a carport that's separating 2 entities, then I'm looking at 2 separate buildings.
Okay, so from not
How
from the
is it
fair port,
separated?
then
Yeah.
they should get 2 permits and pay money to the city.
I agree. So what are we saying is okay.
So that takes that
So-
wording out, single-family residence, if it's not a single-family residence denoted by the county.
Right.
That's my point. So you free it up,
No,
there's
Keith just
more
shook
of
his
a-
head. He's getting
No, no,
confused too.
So you wanna take out the word single-family residence, and so a duplex can then be a vacation home rental, anything that, as long as they're,
Standalone, right?
as long as it's a,
So is a recommendation is single-family residential units as defined by the county?
No, I did not say that. I'm
No,
thinking
we-
that
I-
we take out single-family residence. As
well,
long as it's still residential, not commercial or industrial.
I disagree. I don't think there should be like 2 or more, and then they're individually, it's almost like a mini motel, if like you have 6 all rented by different people. If you have different dwellings on one property, one permit, and one renter rents that for the week or the night or whatever, I don't know.
So are we,
So that would
Go ahead.
go-
So are we
then
saying
like
is it-
owner occupied required
At-
maybe one?
as it stands right now, if we had a duplex, not a carport between, you know, it's load bearing wall, but a duplex. A duplex cannot be a VHR.
That's correct.
Okay. So even if somebody wanted to live in one side and make the VHR, they're not allowed to do that.
That's correct.
Because,
Because it says detached, single-family residential use, not attached to
Right.
or sharing a common
yeah, I
wall.
know what it says, but why did we sit there and say originally that a duplex could not be I mean, what was the reasoning behind it in the beginning? We don't know.
But the-
I mean-
That's right.
I see this, I've shot,
I can't say intent,
yeah,
but I can say what the words say.
okay,
Park said it was for housing stock,
you know.
to avoid multiple units being taken.
There may be, and there may be discussion that's on that from the council, if you,
Okay.
if that happens.
So what direction do you need from us, Keith?
Well, the direction is.
Do we keep this as it is, or do we further define it as if it's two separate buildings that's only separated by a garage or a carport, then that's okay?
That's the direction that I'm asking for from the commission.
I thought the
Okay.
carport was a technicality on one case.
There's more than one case.
So you've had multiple.
We've had more
and
than
you've-
one case.
You've since allowed more than one? Correct.
Well, we've
They denied.
not allowed more than one. We've had more than one
Because of the
instance.
technicality of attached is the word.
Right.
Right. So I think we recall the reason why, and so that was approved, voted, some agreed, some weren't here to vote, some, whatever happened, right? That was approved, but since then, we're not allowing applicants to apply or move forward with their permit if they
We have
haven't
not
attached.
allowed others. That's
Correct.
A carport doesn't share a common wall, right? It's just a roof. You have a building, and the roof in between. That's not really sharing a common wall. It's sharing the roof, but it's not sharing a common wall.
I think there is, I think historically, there was one case that came up where they asked him to remove the carport, and he did, in order to.
Well, we had the one gentleman who built all those homes over on National Park Drive that wanted to do 30-plus VHRs over there. The city was very specific, and he built his
Detached.
buildings to meet the code, not having attached walls, not having carports or anything like that. So I don't see why, if we made him go through all that, then he can't even have all of those properties be vacation home rentals like he had intended to. Why would we now change it and say, oh, you can have a carport, you can have a common wall, you can be, I think we leave it as is. I don't see why we would allow a carport of connecting the thing that connects building A to building B, connects them. That makes
So
them,
what you're saying is it's clear enough by saying not attached or sharing a common wall.
Yes.
A common carport roof is not a common wall.
but it's attached. You're attaching
The-
building A and building B. I've attached them together.
As I'm sure like insurance
Not
company would
attached
agree.
to or sharing a common wall, okay. So,
Is there a
Not
reason why
attached
this
meaning, I think, Jim, you're thinking attached, it's attached because of that carport attached.
understand. I s- I see
We're not
that.
calling that part a wall, we're calling that part attached.
but yeah, you're saying it's attached because there is that common roofing or that carport. And you don't want to change this at all?
That's,
Or the recommendation is, we
That's-
can't
yeah.
change anything. Yes, our recommendation is,
The question is, should we allow VHRs connected by a carport?
I think this is a part two. Part one is addressing this, part two is the question.
Well, then we can always table this.
Correct. I would
To-
like to do that
Table it and then come back with,
when you get to that
when
point.
we get to some other issues that are maybe related.
I agree with that. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next question was how much of an insurance is required. Currently, per the code, it is set at $1 million, and I will bring that up just so you can see the exact language.
I recommend it stay.
Yeah, I don't think anywhere in California I've heard if you only need to have liability for 500,000.
Yeah.
And the way that it kind of was brought up, I thought it was a little, I was uncomfortable with that. I think it should be $1 million.
I think that that's fair protection. I think.
Well, I
it's-
think what was brought up, and I remember the discussion in the city council, was that it was very difficult for homes with pools to get that $1 million coverage.
Well,
So-
it's not difficult, it's expensive. You have to go to proper insurance, and it's the only game in town, and that's why it came up, and I was uncomfortable of how it came up.
I see.
There is insurance available.
I don't think you should rely upon somebody else's insurance. I think as a permit process, you should have the general liability insurance of that limit.
Okay.
And if you want to play the game with the pool, then you have to pay.
Then you have to
proper
pay
insurance.
extra.
And I'm sure
Right.
that you're probably
have to
getting
pay.
more revenue from a pool,
That's how it works.
Okay.
you know, rental.
So just for clarification, you want to keep the $1 million?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that, yes, that's the
Okay.
consensus. Consensus is to keep the $1 million. Gosh, I hope they're all this easy.
Will protect the city.
Okay, and this, it is now, which one?
The good neighbor.
And now the next issue is the
Good neighbor class.
good neighbor class requirement. Currently, our, excuse me, our requirements are that good neighbor classes is required at new applications and application renewals every 3 years? No, every year.
Yep.
Everybody has to take the.
Yeah, everyone has to take the class.
No, on the renewal though? What's the rule on the renewal?
yes.
Yeah, and this has become problematic.
And I agree because
every renewal, but you have to take the class at least once.
I
Right,
would,
which is great. We
yeah.
should all take the class
yeah,
once.
because we have those revocations where they're like, I didn't know, and then you're like,
But they
There's a
should
whole-
have taken the class. That was the
Well,
issue,
if
right?
not, if they're existing.
No, if you-
It came, that
Oh, that's right,
particular
we
case
added it
came
in
out after.
between.
So I think that it's great to have and that you should take it annually or renewal, at renewal.
Well, maybe we should do it also the other way, opposite of grandfather.
Yeah, by
So
next,
if you- so
by
let's
next
do it that
renewal, you
way.
do have to.
Well, I would say this. I think it's kind of ridiculous to have to take the class over and over again if you have had no complaints and you are being a good host. There are going to be records about that. They're going to know from the hotline. I would say everyone has to take the class initially to get the permit. And then I don't think, unless there's something that comes up when it's renewal time, that should be required. We're getting costly.
So
and
I
think
could
this
agree
myth
with
of
you,
money-
but however, as often as we're changing our stuff, you might have to go back in there every year to hear what the new thing is. So if we have new codes changing or new something or new program, I just think it's to the benefit
Okay.
of them running it correctly to avoid any charges and to stay as a good neighbor. I just think that it's a good.
How long is the class? Okay, yeah, I'd say every year.
Okay, and we're,
No, wait.
and we're maintaining that at per owner, per unit. There's that rule. We should clean
Wait.
it all the way up, right?
You're gonna have, every time they renew it, every year, you're gonna require them to take a 90-minute
Per
class.
property or per
Yes.
person?
Yeah, that's a
So
that's
we're changing
minimum.
the code to require it every renewal?
I would.
I
That's
would.
my
How is it-
suggestion. I'm
how
not.
is it-
Any
We're not
updates?
permanently
I mean, look at how
making
we
a
continue to
decision.
change things.
How is it written in there now, Keith? Is it in there?
It's part of the application.
We've had some pushback on the class where everybody,
Yeah,
they
this
think
is
that they should, everybody should at least take the class once. And like Eileen said,
Okay, we could
we're all
compromise every
trying
3 years,
to-
Well, what we thought.
but every 2 years.
What if we don't? What if this becomes so perfect there's no change? What if it
Oh, if
changed
only.
I'm just saying.
Well, there's still updates, right? There's still things that we might want to address in that good neighbor thing that didn't come up a year ago, so.
Well, then I would say, now, here's an interesting thought, because TOT is coming into the city, there's no reason that there can't be an update from their instructor for which they are paid. That
How-
updates go out to their student, their past clientele. How much easier is that? Here it is.
Okay,
Well, I mean, you could just self-educate by going on our website and clicking and reading and being a good business owner and reading on all the
Well, I
current things.
But that's
and-
probably not gonna happen.
You give
But-
someone too much credit, I think. sometimes.
how is the
Right,
class,
so
how is,
then,
That's why I'm
what's the
going-
compromise?
excuse me,
Once a
hold
year?
on, let's just, everybody's talking at the same time, let's slow it down. Go ahead. What is your
Oh,
question?
I'm pretty sure I made my point, but.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my question is,
Points forever.
my,
No, I don't remember if it changed.
my question is it administered only by a personal, or is it done through, through digital, internet
Did you take the
class?
Did you take the class?
I wasn't required to take the class. It was
At
a-
his
Upon
renewal,
renewal.
he will be required. So everybody has to take the
Everybody-
class
Yeah, no, I was
at
just
least
asking.
once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goes to that rule.
That's what we would hope, right? We have 500 we gotta manage. There might be some new things that come up. Should we have this at every annual renewal? Or do we not change that much? Maybe there's some language changing in our ordinance and we'll just do it every 2 years.
How is it administered? That's
How
my question.
often should we
So
have a
the
good
class
neighbor?
is, the class
think
is
so.
given, there's a, the Desert Beacon, was doing classes, I think, twice a month. And then you could register for those classes. There were a few instances where somebody was not able to make the class, and I think that they were accommodating, one-on-one,
Okay.
sort of class basis. And then for a short time, we had, an instructor through CMC that did it the first Saturday of every month.
So before, were you looking at having them take it once every 2 years, or?
Not in the code. I don't think that that was the city council's intention, was for everybody to at least take the class once.
least once.
So, yes, so everybody, when the code was adopted in June of last year.
So if we had writing that people who had gotten their VHR permits under the old ordinance, and now that they're coming up for renewal.
Then they're
and if
required to
they
take
haven't
the
taken the
class.
class, they take the class. I'm good
Correct.
with that.
Correct,
And
Classes
it's-
go monthly, correct? Twice a month?
twice a month.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Or
they-
every
year.
Saturday.
I'm good
There's
with
no
that.
excuse for them not
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, and there's, I
And
did
then
wanna
once they've
point out-
taken the class, that's it, they're done.
Yeah.
They're
And
certified.
however, just
For a
wanted to
year.
point out that the CMC class
No.
is no longer going, so the Desert Beacon is the option.
What you're saying is, once they've
Currently.
taken the class, they don't have to retake it again.
That's correct, unless
Okay.
there's
As is
code
currently.
violations, then if there's code violations, then
If there
they
are
would
code
be-
violations, then
Then they would be
yes.
required to take a refresher.
I think I think we catch up with those that haven't.
I do want to point out, we did get questioned as staff on this particular language here, where it says home rental, each owner and/or agent. That has been a language in there. We did get questioned and said, well, my agent took it, so therefore I don't have to.
I think we should remove that, the owner of the home.
No, because see, what happens, and I can speak as a property manager professionally, is you get owners who we sit through, every client of ours, we sit through, we go over the code and everything, but there are managers out there who do not. And then the owner, if they switch managers or down the line to renew, they really have no clue what their manager set up. And if you sat through like some of your appeals, they've actually seen it here, where said, oh, the person they did never told me this. And so
If-
therefore, if the owner and the manager both took the class, they both should know the code.
If the agent is responsible for administering the license, and that's whose number is on the
But it's
on the
not.
quote.
No,
It's the owner.
it's the owner that.
Here's the thing with
No,
that, Jim.
it's whoever. No, it's not the owner.
The
It's who-
owner's ultimately
Yes, it is.
responsible,
So
but
the
on the
owner is-
tracker.
yeah.
The number that you
Of agent,
have is a number that you contact at a 24-hour period, right?
Right.
Well, the phone number to contact,
And that's
yes, it's their.
the phone number to contact if there's an issue at the house that they see on the front of their sign. That can be the agent.
Correct.
Correct,
So
but
and/or
people
is
change
good.
those agents all the time, so we
Yes.
said that owners and agents should be
Okay.
required to take the class.
Sounds good. But you have
However-
right now here, you have
However, the
owner
code,
and/or agent.
however, it was pointed out to us that in the code it says and/or, so we're trying to clean that
So
up
take out the
Okay.
or.
and get your,
So take out the or,
Yeah.
and let's catch them up. And once they've taken the course, they're good unless they have a violation or and then they'll be required to take it again. Is that
So
enough
we're saying
guidance?
that-
I don't agree to that.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think they should take it, I mean, it's 90 minutes. I have to take sexual harassment training,
Every year.
anti-terrorism training, all kinds of things at work. Every year, it takes 3 days to get through all this stuff. I have to do it every year. I don't, it's 90 minutes, and there are changes. We've changed this thing, we change it constantly, and there's gonna be constant change to it. They should have to do it on an annual basis. When they go to renew their thing, they have to show proof they've taken the class.
What are the current fees for renewal? I think that a little bit of a misnomer right now with regards to short-term rentals, especially since we're seasonal. Not everyone's becoming rich. Some people are banking on equity on their properties. This is a grind. You're paying a lot of people a lot of expenses. Our fees are going up. The TOT isn't the cheapest around. So putting this extra fee, and to be honest with you, this is the biggest complaint I've heard from short-term owners. They don't mind taking the class, they want to know. Hosts want to be good. Property owners want to protect their properties. But every year it's a bit much, and it's another fee and it's time.
Well, you have the two different ones. Is that enough for you to kind of ask city council or get more, like, what is their preference? Because they're ultimately going to decide.
Yeah, so
You have three that are saying every year, and you have two that are saying once is enough. So just if,
well,
Well, for me not owning a VHR, I would still want to be informed, even if I want to go to that class, or even I did own one, I'd want to go there and make sure that I'm best representing my property to the best standards of what the city's allowing me to
I
do.
know, and
And the
there's-
only way to do that is to be there.
Well, there's
Right,
certain.
and I get it.
Everyone should go to every city council meeting and know every single rule.
All right, yeah, I mean, everyone's got a good point, got it, understand. I mean, there are many ways to be informed, and one of the ways to be informed is to read if there's a change in the ordinance. Yeah, I gotcha, okay. But here we are, it's like, okay, how often do we want an individual to take the course? I mean, if they have it, is it gonna change that much from year to year? I don't see it as changing that much from year to year. And that's my point. And I think that we should get every owner and agent to at least take the course once. And that's my opinion. Now, if we need to table this and move it forward,
Yeah,
Okay.
it's, we.
you'll get your chance.
Just to let you know something about
Okay.
what Frank had said during the collaboration of building the.
All right, why don't you go ahead? Can you come up and explain that? I think that would help us in this discussion. Yeah. Thank you.
Because you weren't, it was like a private conversation during
Yeah.
the collaboration while we were building the content. So I believe the initial intent would be, as you just discovered, agents and every owner take the class the one time. The class, to answer your question, Mr. Kershaw, is a Zoom class, so it's not live. It's just an online class. Takes about 90 minutes, of which about 15 minutes or so is currently about TOT collection, navigating through citizen serve, renewals, safety inspections that are now required every 3 years. So about 15 minutes or so is kind of like almost administrative support for city staff in a way. Taking the class, as I said, it gets to count, you only have to take it once, so you're one and done, like in Miss Leslie's situation. As far as future classes are concerned, it was kind of just decided the one and done, but the way that we left it loose is perhaps if there's a major overhaul, right? So if the ordinance goes through something deep again, the idea would be maybe like a pre-recorded class, because that's some of the pushback that the city council had been receiving is, why do I have to take this class? And, I'm an operator that's been, I'm a seasoned operator, I've been doing this for years. And it is so dynamic within the city. It's like almost every class is different if there's something that changes within the municipal code. So that stays pretty dynamic. Twice a month, we can change it on the fly. But if there's going to be some big changes, there's other ways to do outreach to owners and agents. It could be just notification, or it could be a pre-recorded class, free, reduced rate, but not necessarily like a Zoom attendance. So I don't know if that helps you at
But
all.
how do they
that
get
was just-
accountability that they actually received it? Besides if it just goes to Zoom, or they have to go on there and say they did it, and now they're held accountable and they come back in a hearing and say, well, I was never informed of this because I didn't sign nothing.
People receive you mean like on a pre-recorded one? That's a good question. There's probably some way to accommodate, or I'm sure there's some program that would show, that you probably would know more, so maybe Max, if you have
How
to
do-
take something where it shows that you watch the whole thing perhaps?
The city doesn't certify that right now? An individual takes the class and they come in and they show the certificate? Okay, all
The
right.
live classes we do, and we
Right.
monitor them. I mean, they're.
But I'm talking more for the annual part.
Yeah,
or
yeah, I
those
see that.
major updates. If I'm not required to take that because I already did my one and done, then I don't care. I'm making my money, I'm doing what I need to do, and there's no issue until there's an issue, right?
Sure.
And then when they're gonna come back and say, oh, I didn't know about those updates because I didn't need to take those updates.
And if it were a live class, just to kind of circle back to what I was saying about 15 minutes or so is TOT, that probably isn't going to change that much unless there's like something that's happening within Citizen Serve. So I would think a refresher, if it were annual or biannual or 3 years or whatever you would recommend, would be a swifter process, not the nuts and bolts that you give everybody on their initial certification.
Well, to answer Jason's question, I think that once an individual's had the initial class, yeah, and as we all know, it's incumbent upon us to know the law and know the ordinance if I'm running this business. So, and they can't come back and sit there and say, I didn't know about a change because I didn't get the class. I mean, if I was running a VHR, and yes, I would try to be as up on the ordinance as it is. I still think we should do an initial class Note that, and this is just, this is my suggestion. And then, you know, it's gonna be relying upon the individual to, and make that in the class, that's part of it. And it's up to you to stay current on what's happening with the ordinance and make that part of the classroom instruction. That's my suggestion.
Well, my concern is then someone complains or something happens and it comes back up to us because now there's a code enforcement violation and now it comes to us, we're like, oh, well, we'll just give them a slap on the wrist instead of suspending their VHR like we did the last
And
time.
that's
No,
exact-
because
that's-
Because they didn't know. They come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I couldn't do
No,
that.
because that's what we just said. It's
Commissioner-
relying upon them to be familiar with the ordinance.
Commissioner
I'm sorry,
Krushat?
go ahead. Hold on.
Commissioner Krushat?
Oh, shoot.
From the code enforcement perspective, since we have to deal with this on a continuous basis, if it would be too cumbersome for them, let's say, to do a full class, like to do initial, would it be better to have them do a refresher course, take a test at the end of the course, which then would acknowledge that they took it, and we would know that they took it, because they would have to have a pass and go fail. And then if there was an issue after that, then we would definitely know that they actually were informed of the information.
Yeah, I'm kind of against the, I didn't know the rule changed because the city didn't tell me. No.
And I have to-
You own a VHR, it's incumbent upon you to know.
Right. I have to point out, Chair Kushat, that when the code changed in June, we actually did an email blast to all VHR owners with that new code change on there to say, heads up, the code has changed, here's a copy of it, please familiarize yourself with it.
And do
So
we
we can
a
do that again,
read
you know,
receipt
when
for
the
them
code
to
changes.
say that they
We do
received
not,
those?
no.
Because once again, we're going off of an old VHR that could have been 3 years old, let's just say, with an old email, and they changed it because they changed LLCs or whatever the case may be, and now they're not getting that.
Was that, but you were sending it to their legal address that they have to keep
We did
updated
it,
on their.
we did it via email.
Email.
And you have to have an email in order to register as a VHR. So if you're getting your renewal notices and you're communicating with us through email, we know that you're gonna get that email because that's your primary means of communication with the city.
Leslie has a comment.
Thank you. If the building has to comply every 3 years in code and safety, then let's make the owner comply every 3 years. We'll compromise every 3 years. That's not every year and annoying, but hey, maybe things have changed and I didn't get my email or read it because it was a long ordinance that Shelley sent me, but I will have to attend this class and get caught up.
So your suggestion is to tie that with a 3-year safety inspection?
Yes.
I'm
Your
comfortable with
house
that.
is
I'm
safe
comfortable with that.
and your owner is now responsible for any update that happened, and it's tracked.
I'm comfortable
I don't know
with
if that helps your situation, but at least it gives it more
Yeah.
than a just once, long time ago, and then,
So I'm hearing 3 things, and you can correct me.
Okay,
One
Keith, go
is-
ahead. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing that definitely at the initial application stage.
Absolutely.
I'm hearing that we need to take out the or of the and/or. Right here.
Correct.
We're gonna require both the owner and the agent.
Correct.
And then we're gonna tie it to the 3-year safety inspection.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so
Yes.
then it's not tied to per person.
It's per permit.
Well, they're gonna send out a renewal.
Mm-hmm.
Is that gonna?
What,
Well, I don't wanna speak for myself, however, I have 5, so now will I be required to have 5 refresher courses?
no.
No.
Sounds good.
No, you have a,
it's just time
Yeah,
frame
yeah.
so that the city staff
If-
can track
One
it.
time.
Oh, this is your 3rd year,
Yeah.
I'm doing this, oh, let me remind them they're,
No, I agree, and that's not really about me, just say it's somebody with 2,
Yeah.
your renewal years could be different, that was all I was saying.
Correct.
I
So
understand.
you will have to do 3 years from your initial class.
Yeah, but if
So
you
it should
could-
be written that way.
Even though you get a
or-
renewal, if you show that, yes,
Get
I've
my
already
point?
taken the course 3 years,
2 years ago, so
even
therefore
though,
on a different.
and you show
3
you're
HR,
still
you don't have to do
current,
it.
you don't
what I'm
have to
saying?
do it.
but what if I had a permit and later I bought another property and those are always gonna be like this? It's just gonna be the
Well,
way that
we
it
can
Right,
is.
so
put
you
something-
should stagger it off the initial permit.
For this
Yeah.
one and then the initial one for this one.
So are you
So-
having someone take the class twice? That's what I'm asking.
No, the city's gonna have a record of
And-
who's
and
taken the
it's-
course.
Of the entity.
It is just gonna be very confusing. It is so much easier to say, please, once a year, take this class. upon getting your initial thing, and then upon renewal. When you renew your license, you have to take certification, you pass the class. It's not hard. It's 90 minutes.
No.
Yes, it's a bothersome, it's a pain, but it's something that makes it so everybody's on the same page, because like with the last 2 revocations we had, we were awfully lenient with the people, and they said, oh, well, the person I bought the house from didn't tell me I couldn't have a bus and I couldn't rent the bus and all kinds of, but we were lenient to them.
Yes.
This eliminates the nobody told me excuse. If they take the class once a year, things change, things didn't change. It could be a refresher class that we don't have to discuss the TOT stuff and the things that don't pertain to a refresher or renewal.
Or that's not 15 minutes, that's 5 minutes.
And,
Like, welcome
and
to
I
the
would,
refresher
well,
course.
I would agree with that. You're right. If it wasn't a 90-minute class every time you have to take it. Now, if the person has multiple licenses and he takes the class for one license, are you saying he has to take it for every single license? That's what we're getting back to.
No, but if you're taking it every year, so you're renewing all of your licenses at least once a year. So you say,
That's a
in
certificate that goes-
January, I took this class, I renewed
God.
property A in
Okay.
January, property B in March, property C in April, property D in July, and property E
So it is on
in
every
August.
All right.
I'm confused.
I took it January 1st. I'm good until January or December of the next year.
Yeah.
So when you renewed all 5 of your properties, you showed, in January I took the class. In August, when I renewed my last one, I still am within my year of taking the class. I don't have to take it again. You take it one time per year.
I'd like to go this. I don't want to encumber staff with more than what do you think is necessary? What do you think? I get from the feeling it's like you feel that once every 3 years would be adequate.
Well, let's take the,
That adds more work to staff to say, oh gosh, when you renew it this year, did you take it last year? Let me look
No,
at-
I don't think so.
It's every year. Shelley just said this a lot. Every year they say, in January I took this, I renewed in March, April, and June. I am good until next December.
Is that what
Thank
you're
you.
saying, Shelley? Is that doing it every year would be no problem? Or are you saying,
Every 3 years is a little bit difficult to track, especially for people that have multiple VHRs.
there's no way that
However,
we can,
I'm not here to
Yeah, I
do the
understand
codes.
that.
I'm just here to
Well-
process
But I'm not trying to add,
applications.
I'm not trying to add to the
So-
administrative burden, you know?
Yeah.
Because an administrative burden also costs money, and that's what I'm trying to get at. What's gonna cover what we need to get done? What we're trying to get done is we want everybody to understand the proper rules of ownership for a VHR, what the rules are. I get that information out, you know? And does this change that much that we have to do it every year? And again, I get back to the individual, you have a VHR, it's incumbent upon you to know
Definitely.
the ordinance and understand what's
It is,
happening.
but we didn't act that way last time. We gave
know.
them a pass.
Oh,
because they
okay,
didn't
that
know
was a
the
different,
ordinance.
all right,
Because they
on
didn't
that
know the
situation.
ordinance.
So,
They came back, they said, they responded, they did a cease and desist, there were a lot of other issues that
Yes,
went in there, Max,
but are we gonna
because they did the cease and desist.
But are we gonna continue to say, oh, you didn't understand the ordinance?
No.
you didn't- Here's your
Oh, I
pass.
wouldn't.
That's not the way it went. The city said cease and desist, and that's what they did,
Exactly.
you know? And they still got a,
A
they still
reasonable-
got a suspension.
Yes,
Even
they
though
did.
they performed the cease and desist.
Yes.
That's what would happen. So this is not the same issue.
On that class, can we make it self-directive so that if they want to just click through it, and they click through it, they get a certificate at the end, and
My
they
God.
submit that with their annual renewal? So that way it doesn't go 90 minutes, which you guys are complaining about, 90 minutes. We're showing that, hey, you got it, and if by some
You
chance...
fast forwarded it through, you're
Yeah,
still
and some chance
responsible.
you didn't
and
catch
you
that
passed
part
and you
that you
passed the
fast forward,
test.
and now all of a sudden you're getting dinged on it, guess what? You're not going to be let go on the thing to the planning commission this time.
I would just like to say, this did not come up because non-hosts complained. Hosts complained, tell me if I'm wrong, because of the cost, even at $65, people were feeling that. That's what I heard in the community.
I
And
don't
there
think
were
it
a
was
lot of
$65
necessarily
each
the
time.
cost.
I thought there were a lot of people that complained about that, and that's why we're addressing it.
okay.
Is that true?
It's $65 each time they take this test?
And I'm gonna try and-
Please come up.
Because, yeah, this is.
Come on. Yeah, we need, information is good.
It wasn't
I wanna
the
clear the air on
cost.
this, because Frank came to us, you know, as we do vacation rentals here, he asked us to do this, and I was happy to do it. Anita, the big blonde that used to work with us, she started it, and then I told Anita, I said, let's try to work with another VHR provider, which is when we met Susan. Well, we knew Susan or whatever, so Susan's worked with us on this too. And my goal in doing that was I wanted to be a resource and make it community driven. I don't want this to be profit based. we've had a lot of people accusing us of profiteering from the program, which we really don't, because it costs us the money for the Zoom, the administrative time and so forth. So I don't want to, I think a year is excessive, so, but we could come up with some sort of refresher or something like that. You know, we could work on something to like help you guys with your code or whatever, but you know, I think that Susan's done a great job.
Here's what I'd like to
doing
do.
it, yeah.
You've heard it all, Keith.
Yeah,
Why don't you come up with a couple of options and bring them back before we make a decision?
fair enough.
Thank you.
And
Can we move on to the next one?
Yes, and I did want to reiterate that I also heard that if we have a code violation of any kind, then the class is absolutely necessary. Okay.
How many times has that happened? Now I'm saying they're a problem host. Are you gonna put that into that little chart we have been talking about? Like, you can't keep going to the class and getting out of trouble.
Yeah, that's what I'm
will.
saying. How many times are we gonna be like, oh, keep going to class, keep going to class?
No, and I'm saying, well, no, we have to like talk about that. You don't get to go to the class. It's like traffic school. You're bad.
The regulation says that you're on your third time, it's basically you messed up 3 times, 3 separate occasions, not 3 violations in one day. We have the ability to revoke their license.
Yep.
That
Okay.
is an option, yes.
So, next item?
Right. The next item, I think we'll stay with, you've heard everybody's comment.
I've heard everyone's comment.
You're gonna come up with some options that we'll look at later. Let's
Yeah.
go to the next one, the density VHRs.
The next one is the density per area or density per neighborhood. I'm sorry, no. I'm sorry.
Good name.
Did I miss one?
Nope, you're good. You're
You were
good.
good.
We're on 5.
Just next one. Yep, there you go.
No, we just did 4. We're on density.
Hold on. Let me put it in here.
Well, here,
Yes.
Okay, we've done. This will be the 5th one.
Okay, so my apologies.
okay.
Are you squeezing in another one?
No, it's not another one. It's
They're numbered wrong, aren't they?
the numbering is.
Okay, so what are we on? Are we on,
So we're on number 4.
You're on number 4, which is.
Technically our 5th one tonight.
So,
That's what
yeah.
I'm looking at. 5th one out of 13.
Yep, that's what I'm seeing. Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Keith, bring it up.
I'm bringing
We'll
it
work the
up.
numbers up later, and they can cross it off on their list as they
Okay.
cruise through. So which one do you want to do?
Single families.
Single-family residence built for, yeah.
Built specifically for.
Wait a minute, are we?
There we
okay,
go.
There we go, that's it.
Okay.
Single-family residence built for VHRs.
Yeah, it's this one right here.
Are we close to 500?
We are at.
Collectively, yes. With the couple that we've got, pending.
Mhm. So then I have no issues with this one.
I have absolutely no issues.
No
with this.
issues
You
with
want
this
to build
one.
a house and turn it straight into a VHR, by all means, build the house, turn it straight to a VHR.
I thought there was an issue with when you get to apply for that. Is it after the house is built?
After the house
We
is
gotta do all the
built.
safety inspections.
The house has
You
to
have
be
to
built.
What's the rule now?
You have
The
to
house
pass
has
your
to be
safety
built.
inspections.
Direction from our city manager is that the house has to be built.
Built.
That's direction,
You
but
can't
what's the
hold an
rule?
application
That's-
hostage,
No, that's
while
the
your
rule.
house is built.
City manager is not the rule.
No, the
So,
house right now.
policy-
He decided
Policy direction, not she, the policy direction is that,
What's the
Yeah.
That's
rule
correct.
that's in place currently? Someone can come and say, because that just came up on the ADU.
right.
Didn't it?
So the house has to be built. That's,
It has to be
That's
like a house.
currently the
It's
rule.
not
the
It's-
house
it's
has to
not
be built. It is
explicit
not
in
in
the
the
code.
code, but it's policy direction that the house has to be built. Yeah,
So
What
the
do you mean?
direct, so the.
I think it should be in the code, is all I'm saying.
sure.
And
Sure.
that's
It's
the
not.
question why we're here right now. Should this particular issue be explicit in the code?
No, it shouldn't be, but in order to get to apply for an application, you must have a pre-existing
You have to have a
home.
structure. You
Yeah,
have
but
to have a home.
Structure has to be
Yeah.
built. That's
So-
in the code.
So
That's
I
in the
guess the question
ordinance.
is like, all right, I'm about to build this house.
Wait a minute, where's
And
my-
then I also want to apply so that by the time that my home's built, I can make it go. But there's no home to inspect for a
Correct.
permit and they're
That's
not gonna
correct.
hold the
That
permit.
would be holding that permit, right?
So then, to
So-
Keith's
Right.
point, should we put that a home must be built
Yes.
prior to applying? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so that's the direction I was looking for.
yes. The house has to be built.
But it doesn't matter if you're building a home and then applying, not
For-
renting it to anybody, not selling it to anybody, you're just applying for VHR, that doesn't matter. To me, at least.
If you build it, they will come.
Okay.
But we're close to 500, so I don't know if they're gonna build them to come.
Add it to the basement.
My understanding, I thought that was clear in the, because I
No,
remember
it's
reading
not.
through it. I remember reading through it, and I understood it as I had to have a structure before anybody could put a license. So that was
Okay.
the understanding. So let's just clarify that
Let's
the
just- we're
structure has
clarifying
to be
that.
built. Yeah. Now, after a gentleman or a lady, anybody, builds a home, and then they apply.
You guys are okay with building a house specifically for, as a VHR? You're okay
Yes.
with that?
But they can't even initiate, they can't even initiate the process till then.
No, correct.
Yeah.
Wait, I've got that
Yeah.
clarification,
Okay.
but it is okay to build a home specifically for VHR.
Well-
Once the house is complete, then you can submit your application.
No, because here's the issue. If we say that you build this house for a VHR and then there's no spots for a VHR, we're automatically telling them, well, we
No,
already
no.
promised you that.
No, we didn't
No,
promise
no.
them anything.
It's
It is
possible.
possible.
As long as
But-
that's, yeah, as long as it's possible, that's what I would
we're not
say.
gonna-
Shelley's asking,
We're not gonna-
can we build and immediately
Yes.
short-term rental? Do you have an issue, is what,
Well, our
I don't have an
speaker
issue.
tonight
I don't.
actually did bring that up. Someone in the community that was here tonight
Yes?
brought up number 4, which is number 4 on mine, sorry, the 2 years before VHR. You just
I
bring
understand.
that up and discuss it.
And I heard it, and we considered it.
I just,
Well, I'm saying it out loud.
Yeah,
so
okay,
it's
okay,
like
thank you.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, thank you very much. They need to get the building permit first. Okay. The next issue from the city council, request is the density per neighborhood.
this is interesting to come up now after we've gone almost 500 permits. So that would take, this, I would suggest, given the time frame, this would need to be a further discussion for later with more guidance, because we already have them neighboring, we already have them geographically close to each other, and we're almost at 500, so how are you gonna change that whole thing? So I request talk about
and
that
with
later.
the ad hoc committee, we spent 2 meetings specifically talking about this one topic and could not figure out a good way
It was a, yeah.
to regulate this particular item.
And that's why the cap was
And
500.
that's why we did not have that, and I agree with Mr. Walker, and I also think that we also had the discussion of how can we tell some person, if we're gonna open it up for and the VHR application system is there, and a permit is out there, how can I tell one person who has a VHR license, so you can't apply for a VHR because you're living next to a VHR? That's like telling somebody they can't build a pool because they're next to a pool.
You can't steal my material. I
know.
used that in our meeting.
No, that was brought up, actually, that was actually brought up by somebody from Yucca Valley that brought it up.
So I'm gonna
So-
just bring something up, because I know that this has been discussed ad nauseum at this point. We are at the 500. I do have kind of a crazy suggestion. If this gets pushed, because there is a group of people that is very upset about this, that I thought they would have been here tonight. So I'm a little surprised by that. But one way, because there isn't an uproar right now, because it's hard to say where it can't be and where it can be. This is where I brought up my great idea of readdressing the issue if licenses can be transferable. Because we know where the problems are. And so if somebody wants to do a sale and make them transferable, maybe that should be revisited.
Well, I agree, but I also have a concern about, and I understand that there is a vocal group from a particular area that sits there and has opinions that they want to apply across to
everyone.
29 Palms and as a whole. And of course, there are other avenues for them, and that's.
But I think by their absence, if this isn't a problem, one way to open up these licenses so they're not changing within that area within the 500, it almost creates a density non-issue. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but
It
I
was-
don't, I don't think I don't believe that the permitting should be transferable, because then that turns around and makes certain properties more desirable than other properties, and I think it should just transfer with the individual.
Well, I think then, if that's your reasoning, then I would
Yeah.
say putting a cap on 500
Yeah.
did exactly the same thing. right?
I agree. I mean, it's.
Okay, so that
I mean,
already happened to the owners of property.
So,
No.
You
Because
can't-
if
What
I,
do you mean
if
no?
I sell my
No, I mean,
house,
if he sells his house.
that's it,
my
your permit's
license
done.
doesn't transfer
Is
to
that-
the new owner
to
of
the
the
new owner of the
house.
house.
Well, the
No.
owner could apply. And
Right,
it should
Correct.
be
then the new owner
transferable.
can apply.
But there's a
If
wait
we have-
list.
If we're at 500.
Right, and that's what I'm talking about with Jim. It already did eliminate some value for people on their property. And I'm not talking about flippers. I'm talking about people that live here, have fixed up the houses. Maybe there's a 2 years on that, right? You have to own, operate. It's a good license with no violations for 2 years. I just said I was gonna bring it up because I think it's an interesting thing. Our city is making a lot of money. I think the flippers and the short-term investors are gone. They were weeded out. Other people in this community are heavily invested on making the community nice and are banking on
And I
equity.
understand. And that person that did the
And maybe they
investment.
should get rewarded
And,
somewhere at the
and that
end.
person is getting rewarded because he has the permit and they're making the money from the house. But when
much
they
money
sell the
is the
property, I still think it should change. The permit does not transfer with the property. The permit transfers, it goes back on the market and other
I'm just
people get an
bringing it up.
opportunity.
People have asked me
I
about it, and I'm
understand
bringing
that.
it up
So-
because I think it addresses the density issue.
Well, I
Because
thi-
they're not in here complaining about this.
But
There
how
aren't
is-
letters about this tonight. Why? They made such a big deal about it. I mean, has something changed in that
How
area?
does it address the density though? If I have a house in neighborhood A and I sell it and the license transfers to the new homeowner, the vacation rental still stays in neighborhood A.
Right, well, in
if I-
neighborhood A, it's not over here screaming right
Well,
now. I'm making that
I'm
point.
just saying A
Okay.
because it was the first letter that came to mind.
I think we're in violent agreement right now, okay? And so I would like to, I think we're in agreement that we're with, on density, we don't have to address that right now, because we're at the 500 permit level.
That's not
And-
really a good way
And
of
of course it
addressing
wasn't,
problems, so.
but we've.
It's just
kind-
saying that before the 500, when we were hovering around the 180s, whatever, we were like, let's chat about this. We talked about geolocation and from the corner of the lot, and are we going to allow this? But then it doesn't allow every homeowner. So then it was like, okay, regardless of where they are, even if they're all on one block, 500, that's it. That's all the community is going to have to deal with is 500. So we can't, I believe it's too late in this case to address density of VHRs unless, even if you say going forward, you're gonna say this or that, but that doesn't mean there's still not 20 down the street.
Well,
When that one goes away, there's 19,
I
and this
think-
one gets shuffled into the pile.
While
of-
I agree with you in theory, city council is asking us to deal with this since the new rule went into effect. So that directly is contrary, it's counterintuitive to what
So
you're
they
saying. I'm
did
agreeing.
address it
Hold
through the
on.
9 meetings that they had to try to get ahead of
No,
it
they put
before the
back on.
500.
They've put it back on as a new issue is what
Yes.
I'm saying.
I'm-
So they're getting complaints about it.
I,
At the
I,
start
I
There's-
agree, and what it is, and we're addressing the issue by having this discussion.
That we counted.
And the other thing is you have a neighborhood that if they have that desire to have special rules in that neighborhood, there's an avenue for them to do that. It's called a homeowners
I
association.
know all about it.
Okay? So they could have a homeowners association rather than trying to dictate what they want to do across the rest of the city. So I agree. We've got the density of VHRs per neighborhood. We're at our 500 limit. They are what they are. I say that we just push this off until it becomes another issue. And I get back to the point of it is going to be very difficult to sit there and determine how we dispense the licenses and how we tell one person, yes, you can have a license, but you can't.
Can I
If
make-
they are
completely
available.
agree with you.
Okay,
but
good.
I'm saying city council is still asking for direction, and I'm saying to you, why? That
And,
seems strange.
and we're giving them direction now.
Question two is, it's a little
From
late
the
at the
public.
500 mark.
Can I make a quick comment? At the start of the ad hoc committee, one of my number one goals was to do this density per neighborhood of the VHRs. That was my number one thing I wanted to have happen. Over the course of that committee and my research at home, hours at home, trying to figure out how to make it work, I couldn't come up with a valid, easy way, not even semi-work intensive way to make that happen.
I agree.
It just, I don't necessarily know how to, there's not software out there which would make it real easy. You pump in an address, oh, you can't have one in this circle. I don't buy that house. There's not software that's gonna make that happen.
Okay.
So setting the density per neighborhood, people want it. Yes, I agree. People, it's something the community would like to have happen. I don't think it is something the city is not capable. I don't think they could
No.
expend the resources to make that happen, but it would be a large cost, and that cost is gonna get pushed back to the people applying for the permits, because that's how it works.
Well-
It costs the city money to do things, they equate that to a permit fee.
I mean.
So I just don't think we can do it.
Okay, first of all, it's like, and I don't know how, yes, there is some people that are concerned about the density of VHRs in their neighborhood. And there are other people that are not concerned about the density. Some people like say, no, make them all 8 VHRs. I'm okay with that. Homes get improved, and that's also some people. I don't see a fair way of doing the density of VHRs per neighborhood. We're at 500. The permit cannot transfer with the house, as, you know, or the property. The permit is with the individual. And once an individual sells the home, then we have another permit that's open to the community as a whole for it. I think that's where we're at.
Right, and that's at no disrespect
And-
or anything to the city council that we cannot figure out
Okay.
this issue. It's just, it was tried when it was more possible, when there was only 100-ish
Right.
to deal with, but we're almost at a cap of 500. Who are you gonna go tell, sorry homeowner, no more for you because the geomapping says there's too much here?
I'm in
So,
agreement,
yeah.
but it's just like they're continuing to ask.
I know,
That's why
they
it's like-
did, and they put it to us, and we've addressed it,
Okay.
okay? Thank you.
National Park Buffer Zone. Sorry, National Park Buffer Zone, whether or not VHR should be allowed in the National Park Buffer Zone, this has been brought up a few times already tonight. I don't know if I need to expand on it from a staff level. If we need a graphic to explain where that is, I can
I
dig
think
to
that, yeah, I'd have to understand where the,
That would be helpful.
yeah.
All right,
Are we talking in a you know,
I-
and does it only affect one area?
okay, I will show you in generalities where it
Along
is
the
at the moment,
National
but
Park
I will
Zone.
bring up the general plan map that shows it in more detail. In general, you're looking basically, and I will bring up a more detailed map here that's in the general plan. It's, with the exception of the Indian Cove, it goes Sullivan all the way across, and it skips over these developed properties as well, and it goes basically over to Twilight and then down this way. And the idea of the National Park Buffer Zone is to limit the impact to the national park. I will bring up since we're discussing things now, I will go ahead and bring up the general plan that actually has that in it.
How does an existing home becoming a VHR in the buffer zone affect the national park?
Even
I
if
mean,
you
whether
built
the-
an
whether-
infill home.
Are we talking about the
Let's talk about
number
the
of,
general
are we
plan.
talking about the number of single-family homes that are now in the National Park Buffer Zone? Whether that home is a long-term rental, a short-term rental, or why does that make a difference?
How many are there in the national buffer
Well,
zone?
that's what he's asking. Is it the amount or the amount of homes in that buffer zone? Or is it already existing? Or are we afraid that they're gonna build a whole bunch even though we're almost at 500?
So are we rezoning it? I mean, what?
Right,
that's
to
what I'm
protect the
asking.
land, right, that's a
Yeah,
good
I
question.
will bring up the exact policy of the general
Yeah.
plan
Thank
here
you.
momentarily. So what you see here is, I know we haven't coded this in our GIS system, but if you can see the hash mark, that's the general plan. That's the National Park Buffer Zone. And
Along with our
there it is,
code?
right there. That's the exact language.
Oh, thank you, because I couldn't read it at first.
I know.
And how many single-family
I'm
residences?
trying to do
are-
things on the fly here, so sometimes I.
Huh? So Keith, do you have a number?
No, I don't have a number immediately handy.
And how
But-
many of those are VHR?
I know one plus.
Is that the new VHR?
Yes, but the way I read that is they're just discouraging building of any single-family homes.
Yeah, it
Whether or
doesn't-
not they're a long-term rental, an individual house, I don't see why a short-term rental.
Is there federal law that says that these buffer zones cannot contain so many amount of people living in them and highly
Well,
discourage?
Okay, so it's.
And also, doesn't that go against the
Oh, here, look.
state housing stuff, that we can't discourage people from building homes?
It says strongly discourage intensification of existing allowable development
Density.
densities. So if someone, at least from a staff level, we've interpreted that to say if you are developing in accordance with your general plan and your general plan zoning designation, that meets that policy.
See, I don't see this having anything to do with short-term rentals. This has to do with just construction of homes in that area.
Well, then the
Or
next issue would
yeah.
be not to allow them if they are built in the area.
That's the question. Now, this is.
That's a
we-
different question for a different, that's
No, that's this
how much we're
question
gonna
tonight.
allow.
And
No,
this-
but it has nothing to do with vacation home rentals.
It does on the list. Why are you doing?
No, no,
Right.
I don't understand what you're saying. They're talking about vacation home rentals in the national park buffer zone. It doesn't make a difference if it's a short-term rental in the national park. It's whether or not they're,
It's an.
It's a house or
it's
development.
It's a house.
density.
Yeah.
The way this reads is increasing allowable development densities, which to us means general plan zone changes.
right. I agree. I mean.
So no general plan or zone changes would be
No
allowed
general
there.
plan or zone change. I don't see a need for a general plan or zone change.
No, I mean, this would not allow general plan or zone changes in the national park buffer zone.
Right. Right. So we're talking about construction.
Right.
Okay.
So Keith, if this comes back up, which we've talked about, if the zoning comes up, that there's, where something happened, that there's no more building allowed in the national buffer zone, then we would come back in, and, or it would just be eliminated, not talked about, because
So-
there's no property.
So I will tell you what the staff's perspective is, that this does not allow for general plan amendments or zone changes to increase density in the national park buffer zone.
Right. To increase density in the national park buffer zone.
There's been some comments saying that VHRs by their nature increases the density there. Increases the development density.
Explain
Staff
that
does-
to me.
Staff
How-
does,
how
staff does
does-
not agree with that.
Huh?
Staff does not agree with that.
Yeah.
But this is why we're in the study session.
I do not agree with that. I don't see, because they're talking about building in general. Whether that house that's in the national park buffer zone is a long-term rental, a short-term rental, or an individual home, doesn't make a difference.
Unless they were building a bunch, which this says that they don't agree.
So according
And they
to
couldn't
s-
get the permits now because we have a,
Well, if,
Because we have a what?
okay,
Almost 500.
because we have
according
a
to
limit
state
of
law,
500.
Yeah, but they can't build with the
they can
intention of
build it.
making it a vacation home rental unless,
well, okay.
Well, they can't build if it's,
Well, they can go on the waiting list.
yeah, and they can go on the
Okay,
waiting.
so, let's back up just a little bit here. So, let's pick out this area over here. Okay, this is in the national park buffer zone.
Okay.
So if this, let's see, land use? No, I don't want that one.
Yeah, we're gonna see.
I'm looking for the land use, what I'm
You mean
looking
that flood
for
zone right there?
is, not that one. Not specific plans, what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the general plan designation.
Does SB 9 negate that, or which
Well-
trumps which?
Okay. A lot of questions all at once. So I'm not immediately finding the thing. So let's just say this is zoned for 5-acre lots.
Okay.
What the national park, what we're interpreting this is, as long as you build and you have 5-acre lots, you're allowed to build according to that. What this prohibits is any subdivisions or zone changes to increase the density to 1-acre lots or half-acre lots or quarter-acre lots or whatever, because this is now 5-acre lots.
To simplify, the zoning that's within the national park buffer
Stays that
zone
way.
stays the same.
Stays the same.
Okay? I'm
So,
good.
and our interpretation has been, and this is why we're here, to see if the commission agrees with us, that if you build according to the zone, there's no other, and if you comply with codes and things like that, then that's not an increase in the density or complying with the code.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. So the question is, do VHRs count as an intensification of the density?
No.
No.
That's the question. That was the policy direction.
I mean,
Number 8.
the structure is built. Again, I get back to this. I know I'm repeating myself. The structure is built. And it's within our zoning requirements, it's within our ordinances, it's within our building codes, and it's a long-term rental. And then it's a short-term rental, or it's a single-family house. That doesn't make any difference on the national pub. I don't, okay.
See, this came up though because of the ADU originally, right?
Mhm. But, you know, again, according to state
Switch it
law,
back so I can actually read the statute.
But that's
General
the,
plan.
the zone where that house was built was allowed to build that. It's just what's
Oh, I know.
not preferred is that it's now a short-term rental.
It's funny that I'm the only one that thinks that there maybe shouldn't be a short-term rental in the national buffer zone. Isn't that funny?
Well, what if I bought
Yes, I
that
do
house and
find
I
that
wanna
funny.
live
I
there?
mean,
Well,
it's,
then you would know the new rule.
But I'm not gonna have a
live in the
short,
house.
right, so you're just against
I don't know. I
short-term
kinda
rental
feel like
then?
I don't want parties up there and people traipsing up on the rocks and spray paint. I don't know. It's kind of weird coming out of me. You wouldn't expect it, right?
well, that you could say about any short-term rental, and we have rules in place for our short-term rentals.
But
if they
she's
have
just
issues.
saying because it's
I'm
on
looking at
the buffer of the national park.
Desert, beautiful.
I understand
I am
that,
seeing that a little different than being in downtown.
but the structure is still going to be built.
I'm just saying how I'm interpreting that a little bit different on the general plan as well with regards to density. I'm not so certain about that definition. And actually, I'd like to look into that a little bit more.
I'm pretty sure as far as like I'm gonna guess.
Okay,
that-
so the answer is, Keith, I think we're in agreement that, no, short-term rentals in the national park, or excuse me, short-term rentals in the national park buffer zone make no difference, or it doesn't affect the national park buffer zone. As long as it's done within our established code and within our established zoning, it's okay.
Okay, we're all not in agreement. I just
Yeah.
want to say that on
Yeah.
that point for myself.
Yeah.
You all agree. I feel funny about that, about what the goal is with the national park. I'm just making.
If
that
you want to
statement.
change, I mean, if we want to change
Well,
the
I just
density,
asked for
if
more
we want to
questions,
change,
agreed with that.
if you're talking about, Eileen, if you want to change what the density is or the zoning in the national park buffer zone, that's a separate question.
Well, I think that my thing is just to so quickly dismiss the interpretation of this, number one, I mean, what the goal is, that's fine. We can all look at it and go, yeah, okay, you build a house, you wanna be able to do what you ever are, and here's the rules, and I did it there. But we're allowed to say some things are special. So while that is the current rule, we're allowed to carve out some other special rules because it is the national park. That's all I was saying, and so that word density, my normal legal mind would want me to maybe delve a little deeper, that's all.
Should
into
should
the
we
density.
not allow long-term rentals in the
National park
buffer
boundary zone?
zone?
Or any building whatsoever, and then those
Because
property values are
It's just a-
nothing?
it's just a-
This
I just think
past
it's special.
weekend,
That's all, I wanna do a little, maybe a
I
little more
wholeheartedly agree. The
research.
national park is,
Okay.
is probably one of the most special things about this area, right? But it's very hard to just say, nope, you can't do a vacational rental there because
You're in the national park buffer zone.
You're in the national park buffer
And I'm
zone.
not even at that point, that's all I'm saying. I
Okay.
don't wanna get a hard and fast rule,
I-
that's all.
I know,
I just
I'm
don't
just-
wanna be included in the we all on that one.
May I address the council?
Commission, yeah.
Commission.
Yeah.
This is important to me as an issue because construction happened within the zone just recently, and the building was instantly turned into an SDR. And that's what I'm concerned about, seeing more purpose-built stuff in the zone itself. That's where I'm coming from, and this is an issue I've been pushing for a little bit in front of the city council. So that's my statement.
Okay,
Well, I think
thank
it
you.
all goes back to what we just talked about too. You're building a house. If they have the intention of making it a short-term rental, I mean, there's no guarantee because they're building this house without a permit. So if they don't get it, now what are they going to do?
Then it won't be a short-term rental.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue here, I guess you're concerned about, and I remember this, you're talking about the house on Campbell Way. I had the one individuals from outside
Sullivan.
up, pardon? Sullivan, I'm sorry, I said Camp, yeah, Sullivan, was on a 5-acre lot. Another property was on a 5-acre lot. They were on two different 5-acre lots.
Unless we're just gonna say no construction in the national park buffer zone.
yeah.
No new construction in the national park buffer zone. And I think, like Leslie brought up, SB 9 is gonna say absolutely not. You can't tell people you can't build a house in the state of California, no matter
and
where it's at.
this does run, state law says,
So
in essence, says we can have any single-family residence, or any single-family residentially zoned property can have
Let
up
me
to
just
4
move this on.
residences.
We are in consensus with staff. We are in consensus with staff, okay? Okay, yeah, no, I mean, just saying that. I know that you may
I
disagree.
just think overlay zones are
Yeah.
really important. There's
Yeah.
historical overlay zones.
I agree.
There's other
But-
overlay
but-
zones, so we have a
but-
general plan that says specifically about that area.
Yes, it does, and
I
it
know
says these
houses
are the
can be built.
densities. Yes.
So maybe they shouldn't be long-term rentals, maybe they shouldn't be short, maybe it's so special, and that's what they meant in the
You
general
know,
plan.
I agree, and that's probably an issue to be discussed,
Okay?
because right now we're dealing with
Violation of SB
insurance.
9 and be in all kinds
But,
of
No,
trouble.
you- I'm
but
saying- I didn't
federally,
say
I'm
not
sure
build a
that they were
house.
like, all right,
Okay.
a buffer zone will be here, the park, even if that was built, given what those lands designated as, we're gonna be okay because it's the buffer zone, we still have this to protect.
Okay, as chairman, I'm closing this point. You have the consensus. We'll move to the next one.
I just want to get a consensus from the commission that we want to continue on at 7:20 now. Did you want to continue on, or you want to take the rest of these on next park commission?
Another day.
How many more we have?
Yes, seven, there's seven.
7.
I have got 7 more.
Why don't we just have a 10-minute break and finish tonight?
Oh, Tim.
Let's get through it.
I don't know, okay, I'm looking at an option of when would you meet next week or the week after?
It would be at the next regularly scheduled
Yeah,
planning
regular-
commission
Which would be when?
The
in
second.
2 weeks.
Okay,
Do you have an agenda already for that figured out?
no.
No, that's is why I'm
The
No, I'm
asking the
just
question.
asking.
The last 7 items.
Then I'm gonna ask how the commission feels. I am for taking those 7 and moving them to the next meeting on the agenda.
I second that motion.
I third it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
I think we were gonna open it up to the public after we did that one section, though. That is what
well,
we
I
said.
haven't done that yet. What I'm
Okay, I just
moving
wanna
is
remind
that,
you.
do we go with the next 7, or do you
I
move
was
the
just
next 7 to the
reminding you.
next agenda? I'm moving the next 7 to the next agenda.
Okay.
Now, if you would like, since I did say that I would open up, now that we've completed those items concerning vacation home rentals, I will reopen public comment at this time. Would anybody like to address the commission at this time? Going over what we've already covered. But of course.
I took notes. Hey, I'm Steven.
And your name is Mr.
Stephen Buchanan, yeah. I work for 29 Palms Realty. I think just leave it at 5 permits. I just think that it's grandfathered in. We already have 500 capped, so it doesn't really matter. I think it should be reassessed. And I think that, the more, I know it's an issue, it's a fine line because I'm a vacation rental homeowner and I also work in real estate. My business have been greatly affected by this, but at the same time, I also have a business and the competition is so much that just because you have a vacation rental doesn't mean that you're banking a whole bunch of money. So I think it should be, the more houses that are built, the 500 permit thing should be reevaluated. I don't know how, because I also don't want a city of vacation rentals. Nobody does. It's like, I live and work in this community. I love this community. I think it's awesome. So that's about that. The Good Neighbor class I hated and at first, and I learned a lot. You were awesome. You were awesome. I thought it was really cool. I think education is really the key in this whole thing. Health and safety. There were a lot of things I didn't know. So I'm a vacation rental home owner. I have vacation rental number 60. I'm also on, I think, the website for 29 Palms. There were a lot of things I didn't know. I got dinged for everything, okay? So when my vacation rental permit was up for renewal, $3,400 later, and a week before the timeline, I finally got my permit reinstated. So I learned a lot. So a lot of health and safety reasons. I think that once you, I've already paid my money. I don't want to pay another class. I don't want to do it again. I mean, it's like a bartending thing or a real estate thing. Every 3 years, something like that, have it, have the people do it. And then once the things are reevaluated, data capture them in a CRM and blast them out with the new information. I didn't know about a hot tub, a lot of stuff like that. And I think the permits should be transferable. I really do. Case in point, I own one house here. I've spent so much money for my backyard. I mean, like, and I know it's a fine issue because, and I'm not saying what I think should be stoned. I'm just talking because I've put so much money into my backyard. If I went to sell my property right now, the only person that would want to buy it would be someone who'd be like, wow, this would be a great vacation rental home. It devalues my property so much. I mean, and I've also paid for my business license, so that's kind of a reason too. And I put so much money into my house that I think that it should transfer over because I've added so much value into my, like I have the best corrugated fence in 29 Palms. You guys should see it. It's really nice. But I mean, like, even if it's not a transferable thing, you know, the value that people are putting into their property, increases home value. So I think that's all. So.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Would I have anybody else who would like to comment at this second opening to the public? Then I'm going to close public comment. That was it. Okay. So I just want to reiterate, okay, those next 7 items will be on the agenda for our next meeting, and we'll go over those and we'll put it out and we'll work through theirs.
That's correct. And
Then-
if we have time, we'll do other workshops,
Okay.
depending on how efficiently we get through the next
Okay.
one.
Then if I have nothing else, I adjourn this meeting.
Oh, man. I was just staying an hour.
Jesus Christ.